There we go. TikTok up. And are you up? YouTube. Let's see. What's going on? Oh, yeah. There we go. Okay. What's going on? Beautiful. Okay. Alrighty. What is up, folks? Whoa. Okay, there we go. Perfect. I think I'm live here. I know I'm live on YouTube. I don't know if I'm live on TikTok. It appears I am, but we'll see. We will see. Okay, cool. Awesome. I had a whole lot of guests in the request box yesterday that I didn't get to, so hopefully they come back today. We'll see. Then also there's that one guy, I can't remember his name. He never sent me his argument, but I did notate it. And so I have a bit of that saved from what I did some research on yesterday night and this morning. It was interesting, though. I hadn't heard that before. But I have come with a defeat. Hopefully we can get some guests in the box here. And I still got to figure out how to add mods. Anyways. What's up, folks? Gods don't exist. Religion is delusion. Oh, is it? What about that? Is that better? Can you see it better now? That should be more helpful. 8th rank, let me know if that's better. Gods don't exist. Religion is delusion. Reason and rationality are stopping you. Well, what if there's reason and rationality? Oh, you know what? I'm looking at it here. I see what you're saying. Let's see if this fixes it. Yep. A little bit more. I don't know why they gotta have all that stuff. You know what? Let me make this a little bit smaller. Oop, nope. Okay. That should be a little bit better. I'm like looking on my phone while looking at this, so that should help. Okay. Hey, I'm right here. Okay. That's better. Okay, cool. Thoughts on military service as a Christian? There's nothing inherently wrong with military service. I see what you meant. 8th rank. But this person, Curtis, said gods don't exist. Reason and rationality. I think reason and rationality would actually lead you to God. Feel free to come up in the chat box if that's you requesting here. The person that's in the guests, you have like a troll name, so I'm not sure if this is somebody, if I want to bring you up here. Person with crude name, if you could, you debate daily. Okay. Gotcha. I don't know. I just, I'm not sure about that. Well, we're going to bring up Sean Hunter. Let's see.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, well, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me up. Sure. Sorry, my audio's just a little low. So you think, since Christianity is true, do you believe that other faiths, such as Judaism, are not true?
I think Judaism is an incomplete Christianity.
And why do you believe that?
Because I think Christianity is true. And Judaism is not the whole story.
So I guess what completes Judaism?
The first coming of the Messiah.
And I mean, obviously Jews don't believe that the Messiah has come yet. And and the excerpts I've heard from other Christians regarding Jesus and his, um, I guess, his practice with Judaism, it sounds like he adhered to the same practices as Jews today and Jews then. So,
Yep.
do you think that he felt it was incomplete? Do you think he would have also felt that the Messiah came, given he did not fulfill the messianic prophecies, all of them?
So I feel like if Jesus came and he resurrected from the dead, that would mean that like the majority of his claims, we have to either take his claims to be true or false, or we could like meet somewhere in the middle. But if we meet somewhere in the middle, we're going to kind of come to like some arbitrary point. So either it's kind of like you look at the trilemma that C.S. Lewis noted, the lunatic, liar, or Lord thing. So I think that if this is this guy who claimed to be God, he rose from the dead, we have reason to believe that he did fulfill the prophecies in the manner at which they were prophesied. I would say that I don't make the argument from prophecy because I feel like prophecies are intentionally cryptic. Part of that actually ties into what I think happened with the atonement. I think that it's intentionally cryptic in order so Satan is not fully aware of what's going on. Otherwise, Satan would not have led folks or wanted folks to crucify Christ. So I think there's a reason to have that. But if the resurrection is true, like that would mean, well, Jesus predicted his own resurrection and that happened. That's what Christianity hinges on. So if that's the case, if the resurrection did happen, then Christianity is true. That's the central claim of Christianity, and it hinges upon that. And so Judaism would thus be incomplete without that. We could argue over messianic prophecy all day, but if we have someone who claimed to be God that resurrected from the dead, I think we should take what they have to be pretty seriously.
So, can you clarify for me? So, the resurrection, like Christianity hinges on the resurrection because it informs him being messianic. Is that what it is?
No. What I'm saying is, well, I think that is part of it. He claims to be the Son of Man. So, like what it says in Daniel 7. So, he also predicts his resurrection. And this is the central claim to Christianity, is Christ resurrected from the dead. This was like kind of the changing point, and this is why people ended up going through persecution and did so willingly, because they believed that this happened. The resurrection was the turning point. You had like the climax of Jesus going through and causing, I don't want to say causing havoc, but being revelatory in ancient Palestine, changing how people thought, revealing God's true nature to us. And then he predicts he's going to die and be risen on the third day. That's what happens. So when someone can die and then predict and kind of go through, and then we can argue if you want about Isaiah 53 or Isaiah 9. It doesn't matter. Even if we like put those to the side and say, I can't say that he fulfilled those. He did fulfill this, and he claimed to be God. So then we have to look, someone could say, well, you're going to post hoc rationalize how you look at these messianic prophecies. But you don't necessarily have to do that, because now we have additional data that we didn't have before. And you
Like
could
what?
see how it would fit some of the messianic prophecy.
So, here's the thing. And let me just clarify this. So the resurrection is more a citation of his immortality. Is that correct?
Not
Like him
necessarily.
being God. Okay.
You could say
Well,
it's part of it, but it's not more that per se. But anyways, let me let you continue. I interrupted.
sorry. Thank you. So when you talk about fulfilling messianic prophecy, I know that you don't like to focus on it, but you've said it a couple of times, like he fulfilled some messianic prophecies.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus would have believed, and Jews believe then and believe now, that it's not about fulfilling some of the messianic prophecies that make you the Messiah, right? It's about fulfilling all messianic prophecies that make you the Messiah. And
Mm-hmm.
when you talked about when you spoke about the messianic prophecies being cryptic, they're not that cryptic, right? They're outlined in the oral Torah, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I understand that that's a concept that seems unique, or maybe you've never heard of it. I've come across a lot of people that have heard of it, but the Torah is comprised of two puzzle pieces: the written text and the oral Torah,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which was compiled by rabbis after the fall of the Second Temple and written and is now called the Mishnah. But like in Sotah, right, which is a section of the oral Torah, it is those messianic prophecies and the requirements to be the Messiah are outlined. So it's not very cryptic, and also like
In the
if
Sota, is that what you're saying?
yeah, SOTA is the
Okay.
English spelling.
I have not read the
Um,
Sota. So I
It's
couldn't
the
tell
oral
you.
Torah, but yeah.
What's the
But
difference?
like, pardon.
What's the difference?
So the oral Torah works in tandem with the written text, i.e., the Torah, and it outlines the the Jewish law, basically, right? So it goes to different passages throughout the Tanakh, through the Torah,
Hmm.
and it provides the, I guess we'll say, legal meaning as it pertains to theology, and that is how Jews understand the Torah and how the mitzvot are carried out, and but that's what Jesus would have practiced as well, because it is derived from the same encounter with Moses receiving the Torah. You know,
Yeah.
um, so that's, I mean, like when you talk about Isaiah 53, Isaiah 9, that sort of thing. I mean, those passages have very clear cut understandings, right? And the only reason and even Daniel, like Daniel was circa, 3rd century BCE, right? Like
I don't know
they're
about
well,
that. I
well,
think
Daniel was,
you're going to struggle to
was
make
the
that
end, was the
argument.
end. Why?
So, if we make that argument, Daniel would be like the most preserved ancient text in all of existence because we have the Dead Sea Scrolls from the 3rd century. So that would
Oh,
mean
sorry.
we have,
It looks like it's actually 6th century.
yeah,
So it was
sixth
around the
century is
same
what I
time
was
as
making.
Isaiah and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
No,
perfect.
no,
I mean,
no. Isaiah is before the 6th century. I think Isaiah 7th century.
so
Not
Isaiah
too
is
far
like,
off.
so Isaiah is actually, it's roughly 597, right? Like it's at the beginning of the Babylonian exile, right? When you look at Isaiah 53, that's what is going on at that particular time. The Babylonian exile, Babylonians are coming over, running everything. That's what's going on in
Okay.
Isaiah.
So the
And
very
then, so it looks
beginning
like,
of the
yeah,
sixth
and then
century.
Daniel's like the end of the century. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but again, like they have well defined context and understanding, because again, these were texts that were compiled or written by Jews,
Hmm.
right? And the meaning that is being held is by the people who participated in recording them, right?
Hmm.
So like when you refer to Isaiah 53 as as a sign of Jesus, in the Old Testament and in the Tanakh, right? It's only when you presuppose that Jesus is the Messiah or Jesus is immortal or so on and so forth that you can arrive at that, because the Jews who wrote about what was going on at that time wouldn't have thought that, right?
So I wouldn't agree with that, but okay.
I, of course, I don't think you would. Where would your pushback be?
Well, because when it says that so the argument against like the anti-missionary argument, Muslim whoever that's making this argument against the skeptic argument is going to say that the suffering servant is who 53 is talking about, Isaiah 53, but it says that the suffering servant is blameless, and I can't think of any point in time where Jacob or any suffering servant, any mention of Israel itself being blameless. So that's an inherent issue that I have yet to see overcome by the skeptics. The second piece to that would be, and I don't typically, like I said, I don't typically make the messianic argument. So
Sure.
I think with Daniel 7, I always confuse Daniel 9 and 7. There's an anointed one who's supposed to come before the temple falls, right? So we have a clear cutoff at 70 AD. This person had to have come, or else this doesn't make sense. So who came? Who was the person that came? It's a pretty serious problem that I have not heard a good response for from the anti-missionary crowd. And I've looked up Rabbi Tovia Singer. I've looked up legitimate critics of this position. Obviously, any legitimate Orthodox Jew rabbi is going to disagree, but he's a pretty prominent one. And then some other Hebrew scholars that are Orthodox Jews, they're going to say the same thing. I just, what's the explanation there? That seems really odd to me. If you have the mindset of like the preterists that say that Jesus already came back, then you don't see that the second half of these prophecies or the portion of prophecies that you could argue weren't fulfilled, the Christian is going to say, well, that's for the second coming, whereas the preterist doesn't have that option. But if we have that option, I don't see why we wouldn't take up that option, because it's applicable, it's valid. But back to Isaiah 53. It seems like that's what you wanted to
Sure.
talk about.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
So in verse 4, I'm going to be lazy and by the way, what is your background? Are you an Orthodox Jew or what's your position?
I'm Jewish, yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. All right. So, do you speak Hebrew?
Yeah, not well enough.
Okay, I don't. So I was going to say, if you don't get mad,
But I have I
don't
have up
critique me
I
if
have
I
up
screw
the
that up.
Hebrew to English.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't read Hebrew. I know more Greek than I do Hebrew. But anyways, in verse 4, it says, "However, it was our sicknesses that he himself bore, and our pains that he carried. Yet we ourselves assumed that he had been afflicted, right? Struck down by God and humiliated." Okay. He was pierced for our offenses. Now, I understand there's debate amongst that term, pierced. It's fine. He was crushed for our wrongdoings. The punishment for our well-being was laid upon him. And then it continues going down, and his wounds are healed. All of us, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us have turned his own way, but the Lord has caused the wrongdoing of all of us to fall on him. So this is the NASB. This is a fairly accepted translation among scholars, but I know the critique is going to be, this is still Christianized. So first question, is this an accurate translation?
So I actually believe you're right when you mentioned pierced in Hebrew translates to wounded, but I don't think that it really matters that much. I think that the translation into the version that you're talking about is like 80 to 85% spot on. And when I say 80 to 85%, I literally just mean that like individual words were like translated differently, but they don't change the text. Does that make sense?
Yes, I see what you're saying.
I mean, I think it's a pretty agreeable text. So here's the thing. I understand. I mean, because everyone goes immediately to verse 4, right? When I talk about Isaiah 53, I think that there's some context that you lack only because you're not Jewish, you weren't brought up Jewish, but there are a lot of themes going on, specifically in Isaiah 53, that fall on deaf ears, so to speak, if you don't really understand, Jewish culture and tradition and so on and so forth. So, like in Isaiah 53, the reader is, lamenting about everything that's going on at that particular time. We agree, obviously, it's during the Babylonian exile, it's chaos, and there's a common theme in Judaism that when bad shit happens to the Jews, whether it be the Babylonian exile, the Romans, the Holocaust, whatever, it is God's way of saying you have strayed too far, from the practice that I bestowed upon you, right? And now I'm essentially punishing you and causing catastrophe to bring you back, right? So in Isaiah 53, he's lamenting over that concept, and he's also imagining that the Messiah is basically right around the corner, because also in the description of the Messiah basically the requirements and kind of how things will go is that when great catastrophe happens, such as the Babylonian exile or similar, the Messiah is right around the corner to basically come pick up all the pieces and then
Just like
bring
today,
you
what
closer
Christians
to
say
adhering to God.
about the end times.
I don't know.
Well, it's the same.
Well,
It's the same type of concept.
it's
It's like a psychological
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what's going on in Isaiah 53, right? There's no image of a specific person, right? Because the person that obviously you want to talk to me about doesn't exist yet, and nobody knows of him yet, right? So it is like a generic display of like, things are bad. We fucked up. We strayed from adhering to God's, plan for us, right? Or practice. And now we're being punished. But hopefully, the Messiah is right around the corner, as they say, to take us back into the land and closer to God.
No, I see what you're saying. Like I said, I'm familiar with the anti-missionary argument. So I think a more challenging one to answer, though, would be verse 7. I'm sorry, Daniel 7. So talking about the anointed one. So what is your explanation for Daniel 7? Who is the anointed one that showed up before the second temple was destroyed?
Hold on, I'm looking at it one more time.
That's okay. Oh, you know what? I didn't even ask you. Are you 18?
So, yeah,
I probably should have
I'm
asked.
32. I'm 32.
Okay. I got to get used to asking people that.
Yeah, that's all right. So the Jewish belief is that it's, as I'm sure you understand, in reference to the Mashiach, right? In reference to the Messiah,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't depict someone specific, right? And again, because of the aforementioned lack of fulfilling prophecy, Jesus wouldn't fit that idea per Judaism, right? So that's, I mean, if you're using a Jewish text that is depicting someone who's the Messiah, they are all encompassing, meaning they adhere to all attributes of the Messiah, right? And in Judaism, Jesus does not.
Well,
So
that's
that's
what they
kind of how you
believe.
have.
Well, that's kind of like so that's why historians take the existence of Jesus so seriously, because of the criterion of dissimilarity. You're right. This is not exactly what the Jews were expecting in First Temple Judaism. Or I'm sorry, in first century Judaism. This is not what they're expecting. First century.
Well, we're not really talking about first century Judaism.
Well, that's the time of Jesus is what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. I understand. I
Yes.
thought you were talking about. Okay.
No. Not shift forward from Daniel during the time of Jesus, right? First century AD. We're looking at that's part of the reason why the reaction was the way it was, because no, Jesus didn't come and wipe out Rome. He did something different. So there was expectations that they had that were not fulfilled, and that's part of the problem. So that doesn't take away necessarily from the validity of Jesus being the Messiah. It just means that they were wrong. That's kind of the
Well,
claim.
and so here's the thing. I mean, if the Jews were wrong, right, about what it meant to be the Messiah,
Some of them,
then
not all of them.
well, it would require a complete redefining of the word Messiah, right? Because I mean, I'm sure you've read the Torah, the Old Testament, plenty of times. Like, what are the Jews always doing, right? For the first 2/3 of the Torah, they're trying to navigate right back to the promised land. And that's like one of the key components of the Messiah. So like if you're saying that the Jews got it wrong, then either the term Messiah was redefined after Jesus' existence and resurrection, you know, or I mean,
Or it was
they
fully
didn't
revealed.
know what they didn't know what the Messiah was to begin with. And when we talk about the prophecies that within Daniel and Isaiah, the assertion that they're talking about the Messiah is kind of void because they didn't really know what the Messiah was. Therefore, they couldn't really be commenting on it, right?
Well, so what I'm saying is, obviously the religious leaders had their view, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they had their idea of what the Messiah
Well, the
was supposed
Pharisees
to
and the
be,
Jews. Yeah, sorry,
right?
my apologies.
No, you're fine. I'm just quoting names of religious leaders. I know that we weren't all of the religious leaders at the time, but those are two of them, right? So what I'm saying is that even if they were wrong, they weren't entirely wrong. And there were obviously some people who ended up following Jesus, Jews that became Christians. So they became Christians because they saw the validity in the actions of Jesus, and they saw the connection to the scriptures. I mean, Paul says Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures. He's not talking about the Gospels. He's talking about the Old Testament. And Paul was a religious scholar, so he knew what was going on. He wasn't a fool. Now, you could argue, there are people even say today that Paul didn't exist. But there were Jews that believed that this man was the Messiah, and he does fulfill prophecy to a certain extent. So you could say, like, the whole they don't know what they're looking for type, I see where you're getting at, but it could just be the simple fact you have folks that have been through a lot of oppression throughout time, throughout 1,500 years, right? Or however long you want to date Moses back to. I date Moses back to 15th century. You could date him back 13th century, doesn't matter. The amount of oppression doesn't change. So you have all this that they've gone through, and they're waiting for the Messiah to save them from what they think is just the oppression of these people. But the true oppression that Jesus is pointing out is sin, which is if we have an eternal life and the only thing that disconnects us from God, the main thing that does is sin. And I actually kind of adhere to a more orthodox position on sin. I don't believe in the original sin narrative from Augustine. I think that's misdirected. However, with that being said, that is what pulls us away from God, and so that is what the Messiah is here to save us from. That's the true battle the battle between good and evil that he came to defeat, as opposed to this oppression of this temporary period here on earth in this physical form.
So I think you're putting a lot of emphasis on like the great leader component of the Messiah, who is supposed to be this king and this warrior and whatever. I mean, I would I would argue that like if you encounter most Jews, right, no matter which level of observance they are, they'll tell you something along the lines of the Messiah is supposed to bring us back to the promised land. Like that's far more important than like the
What is
like
the
than
promised
fighting a
land?
great army or something. Sorry.
What is the promised land?
Well, it is today Israel, Yerushalayim,
So
Jerusalem.
there's actually a really
It's
funny motif in Scripture. I wonder if you've ever heard this before. So Moses represents the law, right? We call the law of Moses,
sure.
right? Is that, we agree that's a fair
Yeah,
statement? Okay,
the 5 books of Moses, all Moses. Yeah.
right. So Moses, did he make it into the promised land?
No.
Right. So he passed before they got into the promised land. Who led the Israelites into the promised land?
The next generation when everyone had died out because they were being
Who was
punished
the
by God.
leader?
I don't know who was it. I can't remember.
Joshua.
Joshua. Okay.
Yes. Moses' right-hand man, right? His underling. So Joshua led the Israelites into Egypt. And this is where the motif hits. Joshua's name in Hebrew is Yeshua or Yeshua. What's Jesus' name in Hebrew?
People say Yeshua.
Right. So it's kind of funny. Jesus kind of explained, you see this in the Sermon on the Mount, and many of his, why can't I think of parables, many of his teachings in general, that the law will not get you into heaven. He will. And so the law can't get you there, whereas he will, because we can't follow the law. We can't do it in the way that he did. We can't live a sinless life and be completely connected in communion with God. And so that's it's funny that there's a motif directly in there that's connected to the Old Testament. Have you ever heard that before?
No, I haven't. But
I don't know if
obviously,
that's profound or
yeah.
not to you, but
So it's it's interesting. The only thing though is that like Judaism doesn't look at sin the way that Christianity does. I believe, and you can fill in any gaps if I miss
yeah.
anything. Because there's no need for salvation, right? There's no avoiding eternal damnation. There's no concept of demons or Satan or hell or like any of these themes that we see really baked into the fabric of Christianity, right?
What
So,
about Job?
so the concept of sin is very different. Pardon?
I know the concept of sin, like this is the argument for modern Jews, but I'm not sure that that's really. I think if anything, the concept of sin is just incomplete in like pre-Christ. So, because remember, the Christian view is that Christ came and revealed to us the true purpose of the law. He didn't change the law. What he did is he fulfilled the law. So, like the disconnect from God that happened from sin, right? Because you would still agree that the story of Adam and Eve, what disconnected them from the Garden of Eden is they were tainted with sin. That's why they had to be exiled. Or do you not agree with that?
It's not about the sin, right? It's just about like I understand what you're saying, but like if you look back at what you said about Moses and you look back at Adam and Eve, it's about disobedience, right? It's about disobeying God's command,
Yeah, but that's
right?
what
And that,
sin is defined as.
but what I
Transgressing
said
the law.
before is that, but it doesn't matter, like because it's different in Judaism. Like the examples I just gave in Christianity, you're avoiding damnation and demons and hell and like all these things. These concepts don't exist in Judaism in any capacity, really. Like so to avoid sin or to be saved from sin, to avoid those things, it's not really it's not a concept that exists. I mean, like we have Yom Kippur, the Day of Repentance. You know, when Rosh Hashanah, the book opens. On Yom Kippur, the book is closed. Right? God, like decides who like did enough or was good, whatever. Right? But you spend that day repenting, you fast, so on and so forth. But it's still not. It is not thought of in the same way as Christianity discuss, I guess.
Well,
So
I will
when you
say
relay,
I do see
yeah.
what you're saying in regards to like Western Christianity. I'm actually. So I know you're not a Christian, but you might be interested to read this book. I'm getting ready to start it, and I've already watched a couple of reviews on it and read an article from the author. He's a scholar, Andrew Rillera. And the book is about the sacrificial system in the Old Testament and how like the modern Western penal substitution model is wrong. And I agree, it is wrong. I think that's not actually biblical. Like the verse I just read you,
What do
Isaiah
you think this?
53. Go ahead.
What
Sorry.
The substitutes are? What do you
So
think the substitutes are?
I don't think that the substitutes, like the lamb being slaughtered, is actually atoning for sin. I don't think that's actually happening. That's actually more of a pagan thing than it is what seems to be a Jewish thing, because we do the same thing for happy things like weddings and other positive celebrations. Why are we also sacrificing a lamb? It's kind of weird. It's if we're doing the same thing, it can't be that we like does the sacrificial act of slaughtering a lamb, putting him on the altar. They didn't actually like slaughter the lamb on the altar. They butchered it beforehand. But anyways, I'm sure you know this. That act is not atoning for sin, literally. That is not pleasing God to like rid of sin. I don't think that's what's actually happening. And I would say Orthodox Jews agree to that. But maybe I'm wrong.
So,
Maybe you'd say
so
I'm
really
wrong.
quick, you are aware that no Jews sacrifice anymore, right? You know that?
Yeah. Which is
Okay, I just want to
also
make sure.
another weird thing. But anyways.
Why is it weird?
Well, if like under Judaism they were still performing sacrifices up until the time of Christ, why did they stop?
They stopped at the fall of the Second Temple when the temple fell in 70
Right,
AD,
because there was nowhere
right?
to sacrifice.
Because the as it is talked about in the Torah, the tent of meeting, i.e., the temple, right, didn't exist anymore, right? And
So how can you follow
but the
the
thing
law?
is that again, so as I was saying, when the temple fell and they were recording the law and so on and so forth, so that Jews and diaspora Jews who stayed together, so on and so forth, could practice a mirror image version of Judaism as the centuries went on. They remember the prayers like the Via Havta have been a constant. The Amidah a constant. For multiple millennia and then some. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
the prayers that you say in temple today are the prayers that they would have said in the tent of meeting or the temple. In 69 AD. Minus the sacrifice. Right. So people, it is understood that it is sufficient. To still do the call. The various call to prayer, call to worship. The like when you go to a synagogue, people do like I don't know how to. People pray a certain way. They bow at certain times. So on and so forth,
Mm.
right? And that has been. That was something that went on. Before the Second Temple fell. And is what keeps the practice whole today. Until the Mashiach comes, and maybe there's a third temple.
Okay, so that I guess to me, that seems like kind of problematic because in Deuteronomy it says you can't change the law. Right, this was part of the problem people had with Christ. Was, well, it seems like you're changing the law, and that's where, like,
Well, there's no change.
well, there is.
Where do you see the
We're
change?
no longer following the sacrificial system
This
from the Old
right, and
Testament.
you're
And I know
well,
there's no temple to sacrifice with,
perfect,
right? But why would we not
right?
rebuild another temple?
Because it's supposed to come at the time of the Mashiach.
Okay. Where is this cited in the Tanakh?
In the Mishnah.
In the Mishnah. Okay, so that's not canon Hebrew scripture. This
That's that's the recorded oral Torah.
okay, okay. Gotcha. But if that's still going to be the same thing as because I guess I'm getting confused here, and this has always been confusing to me. Is there a difference between what the oral and written Torah say?
Yes,
Okay, why?
because they serve two different purposes. I believe I mentioned earlier the oral Torah, which operates in tandem with the written text, the
Mm-hmm.
Torah. It cites the passages throughout the text. Like in Sotah, you hear about Deuteronomy a lot as it pertains to the Messiah doing X, Y, Z,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it cites the halakha, the law, the Jewish law, as it pertains to the Torah, while citing the Torah itself.
Okay, I gotcha. That will take some. To me, it still seems like we've altered the law in a way, but you and I will disagree on that. I do have somebody that's been waiting, and I wanted to move on
That's
to the
okay.
next guest. But listen, Sean, I appreciate you coming up and having a cordial
Yeah, thank you.
conversation. I've actually never had a chance on my own live to have a conversation with an Orthodox. You're an Orthodox Jew?
I'm a conservative Jew.
Okay, gotcha. and I imagine you live in the West.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Red
I've
Sox fan.
I've
Yeah,
actually never been. You said Red Sox fan?
yeah.
Yeah, same here. Although I don't, my
Dude,
fam.
awesome.
Well, I don't live
Ugh,
in Boston. My family's from Boston,
yeah.
but they're from like my grandfather grew up in Dorchester, which is
Oh,
like
cool.
the okay.
Of course.
So yeah,
Yeah,
the rough side of Boston,
yeah,
but that's all
yeah.
right. You know, they were
I've seen
playing
it.
pine ball back in the day with sticks and pine cones.
Yeah.
But no, I would like to one day go to synagogue. I haven't done that before. I live in North Carolina now.
Oh, okay.
Not a whole lot of synagogues around
Sure.
here,
Yeah.
but it would still be interesting for me to go. But listen, you're welcome back anytime.
Thank
And
you
if
so
you
much.
have any scholars that you would recommend that I read, or
Sure.
any formidable rabbis that I should read, I've read a little bit of Rashi. You know, he's obviously way after Christ, but I think he
Yeah.
has some interesting writings. But please send me a DM with whoever,
Awesome.
and feel free to come back anytime, man.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it a lot. Have a good
Hey,
one.
no problem. God bless. Take care. Alrighty, he's a nice guy. It's cool to have a conversation with folks who actually practice Judaism rather than just have the ethnic background. All right, Pokey Bear,
That is my name.
how are you?
I'm doing great.
Fantastic. So, what are your thoughts on the prompt?
Well, I'm an atheist, and I just like the way you carry a conversation. I'd like to have my own experience with it.
Okay, fair enough. Well, welcome. I guess being an atheist, did you grow up religious? Have you always been an atheist? How did you come to that conclusion?
I grew up without religion. I mean, to be quite frank with you, the people in my family that are religious are insane.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of, Raelianism?
Say it again.
Raelianism.
Why does that sound familiar? You'll have to refresh my memory. That name sounds familiar, but it sounds like a Christian heresy, which I don't think is what you're talking about.
Oh, it's a Christian heresy.
It is. Okay.
Oh, it's a big time Christian heresy. It's
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically it's not a religion, as in it's not like deistic. It's an atheistic cult following. That essentially, oh my God, I should send you the propaganda video my grandfather sent me. That's what I
I
should
mean,
do.
I, I,
But
I'll check it out. You know,
but basically, yeah, basically the stuff that happened in the Bible actually happened, but it was aliens. Go from there.
okay. That is not what I was thinking of. That's
No, it's
beyond a heresy. I was thinking of
that
like an
is
early church heresy of some sort, but no, that's interesting. Now that sounds more like a Billy Carson type thing.
Rail is the prophet that you'd be that
Oh,
you
there's
could
an
look up.
actual prophet that says this. Okay, right.
No, the aliens came down and talked to him and took them to their home planet.
That okay. So he's not even here. He's not even here anymore.
No, he was taken there to document everything, and this like alien species, they were the species who made us, and our purpose is to make another species.
What's this guy's name? What's his name? I gotta look this up.
Rail? I think it's just rail. It's Raelianism.
Alien. I see it here. Alien cult. Matria Rail. He's
Yeah.
a French journalist and religious leader who can. Okay. Well, I can see why that might lead you to move away from religion. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I gave you like my earliest reason. I've been doing research lately, but I feel like that if you want to know the ultimate reason,
Okay.
it's because I've never viewed it in a positive lens.
Okay. So I guess why does that lead you to? And this always puzzled me because if I were to leave Christianity, if I were to just be at a point to where I could not believe it's true, I couldn't jump to atheism. I would probably just believe in some generic form of theism. So why atheism?
Yeah. I mean, it depends. Atheism, I'm kind of one of the people who kind of bites the bullet on like, yeah, I affirm the proposition God doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's
But
the
there's a lot of other
typical
ways to,
definition. That's how in
yeah,
philosophy of religion, how if you go to Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and type in atheist definition, that is how it's traditionally labeled. So
You know, I'm
I
not that much
respect
of a
that.
nerd, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, theism, the reason I don't find theism compelling is because I'm fairly agnostic as to the origins of the universe. I feel like that's pretty much the only, like, honest position you could hold. I don't think we have a reason to believe that it was created at any point, but I'm fairly agnostic to deism. My problem with theism is oftentimes the personal, intelligent, omnipresent depiction of God.
Okay. Well, omnipresence is not necessarily in the classical theism view. Omnipotence is, and omnibenevolence and omniscience, but omnipresence is a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I just said it as to refer to the omni properties. Take it.
Okay. So, do you think that there is like a contradiction with the omni properties, or where does the issue lie?
I mean, if you want like the biggest reason, it's that yeah, I don't think the world reflects that. Uh,
Okay.
I think from what we can observe, it doesn't like, especially omnibenevolence. I don't think that it reflects the omni properties. I would like judge things based on how well they reflect on the world. You know,
Okay.
that's kind of like what brings me to my, I mean, worldview. I'm more of a scientific naturalist because I think it is the most accurate way to represent the world as we know it.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So you are a naturalist then.
Yeah.
Okay. The only reason I ask is because there are atheists that will say they're atheist non-naturalists, and then there are atheist naturalists, and there's other positions around that. So that kind of helps me understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So
I think it just maps on the world the best.
okay. So like as far as having like the omni properties, things of that sort, all knowing, all powerful. It seems like your biggest one is going to be the omnibenevolence, and it's the problem of evil that's pushed you away from theism more so than anything.
It's a subset of it. I
Okay.
think I've always been into astronomy from a young age.
Okay.
So something I understood about the universe, it's kind of intuitive to me, is that the universe doesn't act like it cares about us or anything for that matter. Mass extinction events are regular by the second across the entire universe.
By the second?
And I mean, yes, the universe is a big, big place. Planets are destroyed every second, man.
Okay. So I have to ask then, are you saying like in the last few seconds there have been several mass extinctions?
No, because of the statistics of life probability. 1 in a billion planets are 90% similar to Earth.
So you think that
But
there's
because
life
there's,
outside of Earth? Do you think there are
I
other
think
life
it's a
forms?
statistical, like, necessary, it's just necessarily statistically true because there's quintillions of planets. If it's a 1 in a billion, that makes it extremely plausible given the sample size.
Okay. So we're just basing this off of pure probability. If there are X amount of planets, then we should expect there to be, if life is this, like, where do we get the 1 in a billion from? Just like having the same conditions as Earth?
Being 90% similar, so things like having a nitrogen rich atmosphere, things like being a rocky planet a certain distance away from its star, being 90% similar in a way that the temperature, the atmosphere, and the conditions
Okay.
would be enough to harbor oceans and probably life as well.
Okay. Gotcha. So let me ask you this then. Outside of speculation from like categorically comparing these conditions to what Earth's conditions are, do we have any other reason to believe that life exists outside of this planet?
Yeah, I guess like how you'd extrapolate it is light is that if a planet's similar to Earth, we would expect life to be there because we know life is on Earth. So
So,
that's how like you would figure it to be, not just like what is it like hypothetical. If a planet is has these particular conditions, we would expect this result. It would be expected.
okay. So I'm not seeing how we're increasing the motivation here or like the prior probability to expect. We can say it's possible, but so this is where the philosophical worldview comes in. Because I think under naturalism, we would not expect there to be life. We wouldn't expect anything. If there is life, it's a happenstance, and that would just be a brute fact at best. Whereas under theism, we have reasons that we can give to explain why there's life, because there would be a being that created life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, so here's what I would say. Naturalism, the way I think it just reflects the best on the world, is because under naturalism, although like the why behind things is kind of blurry, the reason why that's blurry is because it's honest. We don't know why something rather than nothing. Like that's the
What do
most
you mean we
popular
don't
philosophical
know?
question. We don't know why there's life instead of no, like it's a
Well,
popular
if
question in
under
philosophy.
naturalism we don't know, but if under theism we do know.
Well, I'm an evidentialist, so I can't presup, but
Well, so,
I
but
mean,
I'm an evidentialist as well. So we can start out by looking at a neutral standpoint, right? This is actually my favorite argument that I run. I think this is one of the more powerful arguments for theism. Are you familiar with Bayes, Thomas Bayes?
no.
Okay, he invented a form of probability called Bayesian probability. And this is like very popular form of probability that we use when we don't have priors that we can use, like for example with frequentism, right? Kind of like what you were using earlier. If we have X amount of planets with these conditions, we can calculate we can possibly have life on this many planets, right? Just like if I flip a coin 10 times, 7 times it's heads, 3 times it's tails. The 11th flip, if you're using frequentism, you would say, it's more probable that we're going to land on heads because 7 times it landed on heads and then 3 on tails, right? But with Bayes, you don't do that. What you're doing is in a philosophical position, you use Bayes in order to increase the prior probability of said hypothesis by providing explanatory power or whatever other measure we're looking for. In this case, we're going to try to provide sufficient explanations in order to increase the probability of said hypothesis for a certain condition. And so in this case, let's look at the condition of a life-permitting universe. Okay? So with that being said, we first ask, okay, we start at an agnostic position, 0 probability for atheistic hypothesis or naturalistic, and then a 0 probability for a theistic hypothesis. So I ask you, what explanation can you provide to me that we would expect life or a life permitting universe under an atheistic or naturalistic or both hypothesis?
What the hell? I can't create new docs because my storage is full. That pisses me off. But what would be my? I was gonna pull up a doc so I could write stuff down. I would say that the naturalistic worldview just posits that the natural world exists. The natural world exists under a set of conditions, like universals, gravity, etc.
Constants, yeah.
Yeah, the constants.
Mm-hmm.
And under these constants, life is an inevitability.
Okay. So is a life permitting universe more probable than a non-permitting life universe under an atheistic hypothesis?
If you precept naturalism, then it's inevitable. Like
Well, why is it inevitable? So, like, by saying inevitable, you mean it's like it's necessary.
it's bound to happen. Not necessarily that it's
Well, why
necessary,
is it bound to happen?
because of just probabilities. Again, the universe is X size under naturalism. There is X chance that life can come on a planet. The amount of opportunity far outweighs the latter.
How is that?
The amount of planets is in the quintillions. The amount of planets that could have life is 1 in a billion. There's
But we only have
quintillions
evidence of
planets.
one that has life.
We have evidence of a lot of planets that are 90% similar and capable of harboring life.
Well, I'm saying that
That's where
one
we
that
get the 1 in a
has
billion.
life. So what we're doing here is, well,
Mars has life.
we haven't actually answered the initial question, was why would we expect? So basically what you're doing is you're boiling it down to chance. But under chance, right, that's still going to be less probable than under a theistic hypothesis where God would intentionally want to create. So I can give you a reason as to increase this
I can
prior,
grant that.
right?
I can just grant that. We can move on.
Okay, so if theism is if we're more likely to have a life permitting universe under theism than we are under naturalism, why would we move forward with a naturalistic worldview than a theistic worldview?
Well, basically because both are like the argument was coming from a place of presupposing all possible outcomes. Again, I'm just not a presuppositionalist, so this wouldn't be
This
necessarily. I
isn't
can
a
just concede
precept
the point. This
argument.
wouldn't be. Well, we presuppose naturalism and theism and compared them.
No, that's not how a precept argument works. So precept argument would be like tag, like what's the transcendental argument tag? If X God, X therefore God, like or like you can't do logic without God, basically, and then going from there. I don't do presuppositional apologetics.
Eternal mind, et cetera, yeah. But
So, but what I'm doing is comparing both worldviews and testing each of them, each hypothesis to see which has more explanatory power, and then choosing the one that has more explanatory power. So by definition, that's actually an evidentialist route because we're testing each view.
right, and here's the thing: I'm very aware that theism has more explanatory power. It just can't evidence these claims.
What do you mean by it can't
Evidential.
evidence these claims?
It can't evidence the existence of any deity with omni properties or any like properties mapped onto God without being a presupposition.
Well, the
You would have
life
to
permitting
presuppose God in a
universe,
certain way.
the life permitting universe is the evidence in this instance.
Let's formalize it because I think you would have to presuppose some features about the nature of God in order to make it like go from a deity. You'd have to give qualia to the deity in order for a life permitting universe to be more plausible.
Well, then what you would do then is you're now having an argument over which model of theism is more probable, or deism. So that's fine. We could do that.
Yeah, and that it would have to be presupposed as to the nature of God. I don't do that.
Well, no. Again, you would have the argument. You would have the discussion. What is the best explanation for the nature of God? What nature of what model of theism best explains reality? So, and the reason why like classical theism has won, or neoclassical theism, some form of monotheism has won the day, is because of thousands of years of philosophy and theology where people have come to the conclusion, like I can give you a very quick reason as to why we should reject polytheism as opposed to monotheism. Polytheism offers no more of an explanation, but posits way more entities when we don't need to do that. So that just violates parsimony or Occam's razor. Why would we have the less parsimonious explanation as opposed to the more, when we usually see that the more parsimonious explanation is the proper explanation? So that can knock polytheism out the door right away. And then we can ask, well, what about the attributes of God? Or why does God have to have these properties? There's an argument that's written, actually it's a lot older than this guy, but it's been refined by philosopher Josh Rasmussen. It's called the argument from arbitrary limits. And so we can either have a God with arbitrary limits, then we have to explain these arbitrary limits, or we have a God without these arbitrary limits that don't need that explanation. Again, positing less for the same explanatory power.
Here, let me run something by you. I think, and this is the reason I said I'm agnostic to deism.
Okay.
It seems like what you're saying is that deism is more likely, not theism. If you posit theism, you have to explain what kind of theism. In order to do that, you have to give qualia to God. Arbitrary.
Well, a deistic God could also have qualia too.
Could, but it wouldn't. We wouldn't have any way of knowing it. That's kind of the whole deism thing, is a God that is not personal.
Well, no, deism doesn't necessarily mean a God is not personal, just a God that's not involved. So the God could be personal towards his other universe he created, just not ours, right? So
I would say deism is the most likely,
so,
like much more than theism.
Let's look at let's analyze that then. That's fair. Let's analyze that. Okay, so under my explanation that I provide for theism in a life-permitting universe is that God is good, benevolent, and if God is good, he'd want to create more good. He'd want to bring about more good. Being good is his nature. Good.
Ooh, I could make tons of things on that. I would say life isn't good. We have no idea to believe that life is good.
But life is capable of doing moral good, right? Rational beings, human beings, are capable of doing good, of doing virtuous things, right?
If you have an all good being and then you invoke beings that aren't all good, you are limiting the amount of good.
But regardless, the point is we're still beings that are capable of doing good. So God would be motivated to create electrons in love. Well, hold on a second here. God would be motivated to create, in this scenario, God would be motivated to create us because he's creating more good. Whereas under deism, this is not the case. Unless we have the tri-omni property of God being under a deistic model, which I don't really think people do. But if they did do that, I'm not sure how you could defend an omnibenevolent deistic God. That would be kind of
Here,
odd.
let me just like
But
show
what
you
were
why
you
I'm
saying about electrons? Go ahead.
Uh, we'll get to that. What I'm saying is God infinitely good? Would you affirm that?
God is maximally good. Or God is,
Okay.
I would say God is the good.
Okay, so the motivations for why God would make agents that are capable of good and evil are unbeknownst to me.
So I would say if God is God, by the definition of God being an uncreated maximal being, God is not capable of doing evil, right? We are created beings, so we are not omnibenevolent. God can't create other gods because God's by definition, a God by definition is uncreated. So that would just be a logical contradiction. So it's inherent that in order
God's a
for,
very loaded term, though.
say that again.
God's a very loaded term. I mean, there's
It
a
is
lot of
well.
different
God
things.
is it is a very loaded term because a lot of people mean different things when they say God. I meant something different by God 3 years ago than I do today. So it just because I have further studied. So if I tried to take the view of the original church, like the old church, the ancient church, right? So the early church did not have the same view that we see today, like of divine simplicity. I don't know if you know what that is. That's more of a nuanced view that actually came more about in the Western view. Really, God is going to be a being maximal, yes, not simple in the divine simplicity method. So that's why I say a maximal being, like maximal in all great making properties. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Okay. Yeah. Let me real quick because I think we can segue into electrons and love. It's relevant to this point.
Okay.
Um, as far as God's motivations for creating imperfect beings out of His perfection, I don't know, but I could assume He did, or He is motivated to create. Um,
Yes.
if He is motivated to create, would you say that God can imbue the qualities of goodness and love into anything?
God can give the qualities of goodness and love into anything. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like it doesn't have to be humans. He can make whatever creature or thing he wants that have these qualities in order to make good, right?
Prima facie, I don't see a reason why he can't from a power perspective, but I'm not sure that he would or if he would want
Right.
to.
Let's just go with that he can because he can. Well, I don't know why this would be motivated, but it is a question of motivation. God could make a universe that's just full of electrons,
Mm-hmm.
electrons that can feel love, that can do good, that can have all of these mental states that he
Mm-hmm.
desires to exist. And it basically just, I'm probably just butchering it, but it's basically a question of why would God do this instead of that? In like a universe full of electrons and love, God would have all of this good agency, everything he could want, he could imbue into electrons. He would have no motivation to make complex beings. He would have no motivation to create a universe as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
especially one so destructive and archaic. Why wouldn't he just make electrons and love?
So even if I didn't have an answer to that question, right? I could just say I don't know. It wouldn't actually have any impact on a model of theism. We can just say we don't know, kind of like what you were saying earlier. How we don't have an explanation of the beginning of the universe, and it would be just as powerful. You know what I mean? That's like a question we could
It would just
pose.
demotivate. It would just demotivate God's motivation. So if you said that I don't know why he doesn't do that,
Mm-hmm.
then well, I mean, it's just again, it's just now we don't know why God would want life.
No, no, no.
So
I've given an explanation as to why God would want life, like life as we know it. Why
okay, why
didn't
would it want
God create
complex life like
electrons?
that?
Well, electrons aren't by their nature, electrons aren't able to what you could say is maybe electrons aren't able, and also Julie, I see you say the early church generally taught divine simplicity. I challenge that, not in the way that we think of it today, but anyways, electrons by nature do not have the properties in order to make rational decisions. Like they
God
don't,
couldn't give
they
with the
just don't
property.
have the properties, nor do electrons because I'm a Christian, so I believe in the soul, right? I'm actually a substance dualist, so I think that the identity of an individual is actually the substance; it's the soul, or what the Greeks refer
Okay,
to
well,
as the
I'm just gonna
nous.
like lay out like the point I'm trying to make. Like, say he imbues the electrons with souls, whatever the hell he wants. You could say it's not in electrons' nature now. That's not relevant to what God can do in his mighty power. He can make electrons' nature whatever he wants it to be. What this is basically saying is that we don't have any reason to expect the universe as we know it under theism.
So we do have a reason to expect rational beings that are capable of having moral decisions, of making morally significant decisions, and that's what we
Why
have.
would they be able to make morally bad decisions? Why not just morally good?
Freedom of the
If
will.
that's motivation.
You can't have, so again, if we're going to be a created being, we can't be omnibenevolent. So in order for us to have free will, in order to freely choose to do good, because it's not good if you're doing it by force, right? It has to be done freely. Otherwise,
It would be free. You just wouldn't know how to do evil. God can do that.
that sentence you said before, you just wouldn't know how to. I couldn't hear that.
You wouldn't know how to do evil. God can make you in whatever best way he can, which is the best way. The thing is that there's redundancies in what we see in our universe. Mm-hmm. If we want to say that like God wants this or wants that, first of all, I don't know why he would. But if he did, there's a much better and simpler way to do it, especially if you're an entity like God. So again, I would just say that the universe as we understand it, theism does not map onto that well.
So I'm not seeing where this is disconnecting from my original point. The point was that there are rational beings that are capable of doing good, and what you're saying is, well, it could have been done in another way. But even if it could have been done in another way, well, a better way is going to imply that you have access to some knowledge that could explain why it's better. And remember,
I don't have to, God does.
Well, you're the one making the argument.
Right, but I mean, we're just assuming that God has this knowledge of how to do it the best way. And I can definitely motivate that the world as we know it is not the best way to accomplish good.
But so when you say best way to accomplish good, are you assuming like a utilitarian ethic?
No, I'm just doing an internal critique.
What is good?
The God model. So good, whatever it means in your worldview.
So, because what I'm saying is, if we're doing an internal critique, in my worldview, the most amount of good is going to be the most amount of people that freely choose to spend eternity with God.
And he could do that with electrons and love.
I don't know that he could.
That would be a limit on an all-powerful being.
Well, no, because we're asking for properties. So it depends on how we define electron, right? So we're going to define electron as we know what an electron is today, right? An electron doesn't have the capacity to make rational decisions. So then you're going to say,
God
well,
have the capacity
God has
to give it the ability.
So it's possible that God could create us in the form of an electron, right? But now this is no longer an electron.
It would be an electron. It would be massless, and it would be a negative charge particle, just like there was at the beginning of the Big Bang.
So,
but it would also have all these imbued characteristics from God.
So what I'm saying is that we're now redefining what an electron is.
God is.
So it's kind
He's
of
imbuing electrons with these things.
So then it's no longer an electron. So now we're saying, well, what if an electron was this instead? Well, that's
it's
possible.
No longer a conventional electron, but the point is it's possible, simpler, and better. And that's not
why is it better?
Because he could make them be maximally good and accomplish all the goals he wants, such as agency and living eternal life with him.
Maximally good is going to imply omnibenevolence. So when you say maximally good, they're still created beings with freedom of the will, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If they're free and they're created beings, by definition, they're capable of doing evil.
He can make it so they're not. He's all powerful.
That's not a measure of power. Now we're saying beings are capable of doing P, but not capable of doing P.
Yeah. I mean, I think God has that power.
Well, that's not what the definition of omnipotence is. That's just like this is also another confusion a lot of people have. Like this is the old, can God make a rock so big he can't lift it? Right? That's like an incoherent question. God can't make square circles. God can't make married bachelors. So it's God is not in the business
with properties. There's nothing that's like logically inconsistent with that.
Well, no, but then we now have these, different electrons. So we can say D electrons, They're not the same thing as what we recognize today as electrons. But I don't see why that matters.
What this is motivating is that we don't actually know, is that from what we see in the world, the amount of redundancy and chaos suggests that a being maximally powerful with maximal qualia would not make something so obviously imperfect.
But so when you say imperfect, what are you implying? Like, you think that in order for there to be a world that God created, there couldn't be any bad. Everything has to be good.
No, there could be just enough bad. God can maximize.
What is that level, and why does that level meet the right threshold?
Oh, well, that's an internal critique. What is that level?
You're the one making the claim here. This is no longer an internal critique. Like, this is,
well,
like, you can say it's an internal critique, but I've given you my position. You're
why
saying,
doesn't
well, why
God do this? Is what I'm asking. Why doesn't your God, the
Right.
God in your worldview, why didn't He do this instead of that? That would be an internal critique.
So, and all I would say is, why? What reason would God have to do that? And what you're going to say is it brings about more good, and I'm going to ask you how so, and you're not going to be able to answer that.
Well, I'm going to ask you for your definition of good, if you can give it.
God.
Okay, so now He's made
God
beings that
is
are
the
maximally
good.
close to God. Then He could make beings that are maximally close to God and get rid of all the hell center malarkey.
I mean, it's possible we are close to God as would be, in like the sense, like, for example, there are some goods that actually do come out of evil. Like, without the existence of evil, even though I don't think there's an ontology to evil, there wouldn't be things like virtue in the sense that we see today, bravery, justice, self-sacrifice, things like that. These things wouldn't occur if there weren't evils. So there can be good that comes out of evil despite that. And then there's also like so we live in this world where nobody ever suffers. I mean, like, we see what happens to children that don't ever suffer, that don't get consequences, and they become spoiled. So why would we expect these other humans to not operate in that same manner? It seems like we're zapping them of their free will.
Because this being is not just a human who's a parent. This being is something that can do whatever it wants for whatever desires it would ever have. So what we would expect is that based on whatever desires it has perfectly met them.
So when you say perfectly met them, what you're implying, I don't think that you and I are going to have the same sense of perfect here, because when I say, like, God didn't create perfect beings in the sense of we are without error. God created us for a specific purpose, you could say. But as far as, like, when you say perfect, what do you mean?
Maximally great to God's goal, maximally adheres to God's goals.
And how do we know that we aren't?
We know that we aren't because we can clearly see the amount of redundancy in the world, and that the space of the universe.
When you say redundancy, hold on, one claim at a time here. You say redundancy. Why are you saying redundancy, and why does that go against God?
Quintillions of planets that have no life or meaning according to God's own desires.
Why is that bad?
It's redundant. He could make all those planets have life and be part of that.
But again, why is that bad?
It's not that it's bad. It's just not. It doesn't adhere to God's will the best, and that's what we would expect.
Why would we expect that?
Because He's all powerful. I don't know why He would not want His goals to be met as best as they could. You'd have to motivate that.
I'm not seeing why they aren't. You're just saying, why didn't God do it this way? There technically is, like, no best world per se. Like, if in this type of exercise, because you can keep just adding one more to try to make it better, right?
Right. And here, that's kind of the argument. What this says is that theism, when mapped upon the world, is really just not explanatory of anything.
Well,
it's just like it could be any other way. It could be any other level.
I see what you're saying, but what we've run into
sense.
here is an axiomatic mismatch. Like, there's a value mismatch here, because we're positing our utilitarian modern values for God's values, and that's not.
I'm not utilitarian.
What was that?
I'm not utilitarian.
Well, that's the typical modern value, and what I guess utilitarianism, because it seems like you're using like this measure of suffering in the physical world as the measure of like the most amount of evil, or you're saying this redundancy, and you could argue that less redundancy is more utility than more redundancy. I'm not sure what ethical system, what normative ethics you would use to like justify redundancy being bad.
Well, in this sense, I would just use God, normative moral views, whatever you take those to be, and that they could be accomplished to a much higher degree.
So, and that's a second piece to that too, is they could be accomplished into a higher degree. We don't have access to the entire web of reality, to the entire web of existence, whereas God would. And so it's possible we just don't see the full picture. We see part of the picture, and we're making a judgment on part of the picture as opposed to the entire picture.
Even the part of the picture that we can see demonstrates this.
Well,
Even if everywhere else that we can't see did maximally adhere to God's will, which would be really funny and mean, by the way. But the point still stands. And I think really the thing that's indefensible here is to say that all suffering is necessary.
no, I didn't say that.
Obviously, there is unnecessary suffering, which means obviously there is redundancy that is against God's will. We need to account for that.
So no, this is kind of like a category error. So, like people try to put you in this dichotomy of either suffering is necessary or it's unnecessary. Suffering is not an intentional part of what God would hope for. God doesn't desire for us to suffer. God desires for us to be in accordance with Him, be in communion with Him. If suffering happens, the suffering, like the causal agency behind the suffering, is entirely based off of the beings that cause the suffering.
Yeah, okay. So when there's a tsunami that wiped off 250,000 people, I can just imagine like God pacing in his atemporal room being like, shit, 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 shit. The stuff I'm doing is killing everyone.
So God wouldn't be the cause of the tsunami. That
What
would
would
be
be?
so. It depends on. So now we're going into the natural evil piece, and there are a couple different defenses for this. The first defense is going to be, well, the first defense, actually the most common defense up until 200 years ago, was there was no such thing prior to the fall. Now you could say, well, that's some young Earth creationist nonsense. Okay, so we'll go into the next defense, which I'm actually a young Earth creationist, by the way, but I would defend that in probably a different way than you've heard before. I would use a
Like to hear them.
philosophical defense as opposed to a scientific defense. I think those that are like spending all
It's
this
weird
time.
when you're describing like empirical things, but okay.
Well, you may think that, but again, we're not going to have time. I have folks that have been waiting, so we're not going to have time to get into that piece. I talked about that last night. That was fun. So the second piece, let's say we're not going to take the young Earth creation route. We'll take the traditional route where we believe in the conventional paradigm, same 14 billion year old universe, 4.6 billion year old Earth, right? Why would God allow such things to happen even pre this Adam and Eve event, right? Well, there would be a redemption value to life. And so you'll see there's actually a philosopher, his name is Trent Doherty, who writes a book on the problem of animal pain. And he essentially says that these animals are actually going to be redeemed in the afterlife. And so, yes, they may suffer here. They may experience events. Even humans experience events like tsunamis, things of that sort. But there's a redemptive principle to reality. To even so, if you were to experience this, because part of the reason that such natural things happen is because if we had a world that was too obvious, that was set in a certain way, in the instance of like God providentially protecting everybody from natural disasters, it would be obvious that God exists, too obvious to the point to where people wouldn't come to God out of genuine love and adoration. They would come to God out of fear and selfishness. Well, I don't want to be drowned by a tsunami, so I'm going to believe in God, right?
Wait,
Something
why
like
would
that.
God not make a planet without natural disasters then?
I just gave an explanation.
Because it would be too obvious.
Correct. So this is getting into the divine hiddenness piece, right? So if this is going to cause less people to actually make it into the kingdom of God, then God would not want to do that, right? This is not the argument I typically take. I take the young earth creation route, but I'm giving you the other argument because perhaps you'd better entertain that. The second piece to that could be an argument like what I talked about last night as well, which is the fallen angel theodicy. This is actually a pretty decent argument, which is essentially that there is a cosmic battle of good and evil that is happening on a regular basis, kind of like Platonic dualism
Mhm.
or Platonism. And in this battle, you have evil triumphing at times. Not entirely like the end view triumph, but they do cause things that result in these sorts of effects, what we occur as natural disasters. And so that is part of the cause as to why such things happen. This is not the doing of God, it's the doing of them. Now you could say, well,
Okay.
why would we believe that? But that's what this does is it gives you an explanation as to why this could happen, despite what we see today if we take a methodological naturalism approach to the facts of the universe. And it answers the question.
Right, and that just wouldn't be like necessarily convincing to any secular mind. My point is kind of just my point from the get go is that Ben, from what we observe from the universe, it's much more likely that God isn't good if we're using that Bayesian probabilities.
I haven't seen why, because you have to so we can like critique my definition of good, but all like as far as God's motivation and God's desires is going to be to increase the amount of people, to have the most amount of people freely choose him. So
Yeah,
none of
here's what
what we
I'll say on that.
discussed inhibits that.
And this is because I like making syllogisms. What I
Okay.
realized about syllogisms is that you don't use secular terms. It's not convincing at all.
To
It
a
becomes
secular person, yeah, because they
yeah,
have
and that's what we were trying to do from the get go. We were like, okay,
yeah, but
fuck the
that's called
presuppositions.
that's presupp like you were saying I was doing a presuppositional argument. That's presupposing naturalism from the start. That's not starting from a true agnostic position. We can't a priori assume everything supernatural is false.
I think we do have sufficient qualia to know what is secular and what isn't.
What does that have to do with what I just said?
It means that everyone's worldview could be considered presuppositional if it's not evidential.
So what I had mentioned was we can't a priori assume anything supernatural is false if we're truly going to analyze something agnostically.
Right, and we wouldn't. We would just basically look at the event of the context of naturalism, how probable it is, in the context of supernatural things existing, and how likely it is that that's true.
So if we go back to the original argument, though, we gave no explanation for why we would expect life under naturalism. Chance is not an explanation.
It's not chance. It's statistical. Again,
That's
it's
chance.
basically just. It wouldn't be chance because there's priors. There's priors which are the constants of the universe.
Yeah,
That
but the
make it not
constants of the
chance.
universe don't logically necessitate life. If you want to take
They
that
do.
argument, then now you have to justify your modality here, because now you're saying that the universe, life exists necessarily. That means in all possible worlds, life would exist.
No, I don't. I don't do all worlds modality, and that's why I don't do necessary.
Well, then,
I do necessary in the sense that it is a statistical likelihood that's closer to 100% than any other thing.
well, where's the data?
The data would be in the objective world, my friend. The data would be the naturalistic worldview, which is governed by these constants that literally accounts for the statistical probability. And it
I'm
maps
not
directly
saying
onto our world. Like it maps perfectly
we're
onto
not
the world.
getting to like the point. So what you're saying is because of the constants, therefore life. The constants could have been led by we don't even know that the constants follow from like we'll take that argument, right? We'll say what you just said.
Well, that's a
Why are the
naturalistic worldview.
constants only valid? Like, why would we expect those constants under naturalism?
Because they are the constants that govern naturalism. If you're going to do an internal critique, that is what you have to critique.
No. Naturalism is just the view that all of existence is natural and there's nothing beyond the
Right.
natural.
It's only acknowledging the natural parts of the world, which include the constants.
No, that's not what naturalism is. So metaphysical naturalism is the worldview that there is no supernatural. All that exists is of the natural. So that doesn't
Yes.
necessitate the constants. So this
So
is where our
anything that is
disagreement was
natural
from the
exists
beginning.
in our naturalism worldview.
So what I'm saying is
Yeah.
you have to give me an argument as to why, or a reason as to why we would expect these constants given naturalism.
Because naturalism affirms natural things and does not affirm supernatural things. That is the exact same definition you used. A
That
natural
doesn't
thing would
address
be like
what we're
the
saying.
constant of gravity. A natural thing would be like the, what's it called? Wave function. the constants are natural.
So this doesn't actually like provide an expectation under naturalism. You're just saying, well, naturalism is true and we see this under naturalism, therefore naturalism.
No, we see nature and we see that nature is true and there is constants that govern it.
Yes, but why is it that we would expect these constants under a naturalistic hypothesis?
Again, because they're part of the natural world. If we're going to take the naturalistic hypothesis and we're going to apply
So
it,
when you're saying
and be
it's
like,
part
what
of the
is
natural
natural and
world,
what is not?
we're already assuming the naturalistic worldview. So
Yes,
let's put
that's what you're doing. You're saying, why would a naturalistic view do this? And I'm saying, okay, if
no.
you
I'm saying
assume a
why would we
naturalistic
expect
worldview,
it? We're starting from an agnostic position. I've already given you my explanation for why we would expect a life-permitting universe under theism. These constants are necessary for life to be permitted, and a God would want to create a life, right? God would want to create life. These conditions must be in order for there to be life. Under naturalism, what is the explanation for these constants? Why would we expect these constants as opposed to any other constants?
right? And
Non-life permitting
the thing
constants.
is what naturalism is exactly what you just said it is. Naturalism is, I'm going to take in account the natural things and I'm not going to take in account the supernatural things. And if you do that from your observations, that is what you're going to get. You're going to get the constants because they exist naturally.
We're talking past each other here. What you're doing is saying that we see this and it's natural, therefore naturalism.
I say we see natural things, and these natural things are governed by constants, therefore the constants exist.
Okay, why would we expect those constants, though? If we're looking at this, you don't believe in God necessarily, but you're not a naturalist. Why would you expect them
I could
under
say that
naturalism?
we would expect them.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Under naturalism,
why would we
we would expect
expect
natural things to exist.
Hold on here. Okay, why would we expect the constant? I actually have in my Bayes argument, I used the constants. Let me pull it up here so I can get the exact number for the cosmological constant. Let me see.
You would affirm that natural things exist, right?
Yeah, but that's not incompatible with theism.
No, it's not. Just making sure that I don't need to motivate that.
No, but this isn't answering the argument. Hold on a second. Let me see. Where is my?
Let me know if I do need to motivate that, because that one's pretty easy. Man, Google Docs, really? I need to spend $2 more a month. Really?
There we go. Okay. All right. So, I'm sorry I keep rubbing my eye. I think I'm getting a migraine. But anyways, all right. The cosmological constant of the universe is 1 in 10 to the negative 1 in 10 to the 53rd power Planck units. Okay.
That's the amount of possible configurations that you could order the constants in.
Or I'm sorry, the exact is 1.35 times 10 to the negative 23rd power Planck units.
Here, I'll give my best explanation for this. Would you say that the constants are descriptive?
Descriptive, yes.
Yeah, they describe the universe. Okay,
Yes.
So if you assume natural things exist, you would come to the constant naturally?
You would come to the constant what?
You would come to the conclusion of constants exactly the way they are by the natural world,
Well,
because they're descriptive.
if you measured them according to the description and you did so accurately, you would come to the conclusion they're this many Planck units. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why you would expect the constants under naturalism, because you would be able to measure them and describe them, and they're descriptive of what you measure.
Okay, you're missing what I'm trying to say here. Why would we expect this universe to go from singularity to expansion and have these constants, as opposed to have the Planck unit be one higher or one lower?
Okay, there's two questions there. Why would we expect the universe to expand? Quantum flux. The other question, why would we expect the constants? And again, I'm just going to answer under naturalism, because I think that's what you're asking. You're asking, why would we expect the constants under naturalism? The reason we'd expect the constants under naturalism is because the constants are descriptive of natural phenomena. Therefore, if you observe natural phenomena, you will come to the conclusion of the constants. That's why you would expect the constants under naturalism.
Okay, so is it possible? What's the likelihood that the like why would they be at this level as opposed to one Planck unit higher or two Planck units higher under
Because in
naturalism?
order to accurately be descriptive of the natural world, they would have to be
No, no,
exactly
no,
like
no, no.
that.
I'm saying hypothetically, what if? Why wouldn't they be different?
Okay, so you're saying why wouldn't the universe be different? Like why wouldn't the
Yes,
universe be
yes.
different? Not the constants. The
Well, the
constants just
constants is an
describe.
aspect of the universe.
They describe the universe. They're
Yes,
descriptive.
yes.
Right. So why wouldn't the constants be different? Because then it would not be the natural world. If you're going to change the natural world, then it would no longer be the natural world.
So this is going to put you into the position that the constants have to be like this in all possible worlds.
I don't affirm any other possible worlds.
Well, is there a contradiction in any other possible worlds? Like a logical contradiction?
It's because of my epistemology. There's no evidence of any other universes or worlds.
Okay, but that doesn't mean there can't be other possible worlds. The
I
purpose
don't
of
affirm
possible worlds, like philosophy in general, I mean, we use this in all fields of philosophy, is to show like other logical possibilities to try to compare for reductios and all sorts of exercises. So
right,
this,
and I don't affirm any other. Again, I just don't affirm any other possibility. Affirming all possibilities
so you think there are
would.
no other possible worlds?
I think we have no evidence of them. I don't think there. I again, that's kind of agnosticism for you. I don't think you could evidence that claim, and I don't think I need to acknowledge it in the absence of evidence.
So you don't think it's possible that there are any other worlds?
I think it's possible. I don't affirm possibilities, all of them. No.
Okay. I guess we'll just have to leave it there as an impasse because we're just speaking different languages. You are much
I mean, it's
more
my
of the
epistemology.
scientific language, and that's fine. I'm speaking more in a philosophical manner. So this is if we can't even do possible worlds analogies and like talk about different modalities like that, then there's no way this exercise will work.
Yeah, and I mean, you said you were an evidentialist, right? You wouldn't affirm a possibility if it wasn't evidenced, right?
I can affirm a logical possibility, yes, and then we can do an exercise whether through inference to the best explanation, abduction, induction, even deduction, to see if it works.
Right, and you could see if it's possible. And I mean, I think there are plenty of things that are conceptually
Well,
possible,
the,
but I
the
think they
whole point
stay
of me bringing that
conceptual.
up, though, was if you say that there's no other possible world other than the world we live in today,
I did
then
not
you're
affirm that.
affirming that that is what you said.
No, I specifically said I don't affirm that. I think it's not evidence. Therefore, my epistemology says I'm agnostic to it.
Okay, so then we don't have. My whole point in the entire argument I'm making is of all the possible worlds that could be, right? Naturalism doesn't provide an explanation for a specific one or the other because it could be a naturalistic world with Planck units in a different measure. We could be a naturalistic world with no suns. We could be a naturalistic world with no moons, whatever. They would still fall under naturalism. And they would be the same explanation you could provide for that universe as you could for this universe, this possible world versus that possible world. Whereas under theism, we can provide an explanation for this specific world where under
Your explanation
naturalism,
is because God wants it, right? Like verbatim.
well, that's not what it is now. I've given you the explanation, laid it out fully. That's kind of like a straw man of it.
Yeah, I'm quoting you from when you said under theism, we can explain in your worldview why the constants are this way, and it's because that God wants them to be this way.
No, it's because this would permit life, and God wants to create life that's capable of doing good. And God being
That boils
good,
down, unfortunately, to
no, it
God wants
doesn't
it.
boil down to that. That's a
God wants
false
life,
reductio.
therefore God wants it.
So I would provide, which I did provide an explanation earlier as to why I would use this model of theism. It lacks arbitrary limits. We don't want arbitrary limits. And then I provided an explanation as to the nature of God, right, omnibenevolence, and why this attains to his omnibenevolence. So this is a reason why he would want to do, why he would be motivated to, and then what the result of said motivation and action would be. So you could reduce it to that, right? But that's no different than me saying you think that the universe poofed into existence.
I claimed that it didn't have a beginning.
Okay,
So
then you
that wouldn't
think
even be
like, but
astronomy.
there could be some naturalist or atheist strawman that I could come up with that would be the equivalent.
Because mine wasn't a straw man, it wouldn't be equivalent. But
Yours
I
was a
mean,
straw man. I provided legitimate explanations. That
yeah.
because God
Again,
wants it
so like
is not
you don't
like
have to like when you're being simple, and I get that it's like frustrating for me to just like say what your position simply is. I know you have reasons for it to be that,
mhm.
but reductio, it's God does want it, right?
That's part of it. Yes.
Right. And
Hmm.
would you give me a reason as to why God wants it
Because that's part of his nature.
without presupposing his nature? I was about to say.
So, I mean, this is just under a model of theism, and we went to the reasons as to why other models of theism or deism fail. So, yes,
Right.
I've
And
given
you
an
have to
explanation for
presuppose
that.
each and every one. I don't affirm presuppositional.
This is not presupposing it. Like this, literally by your definition here, you can't come up with any model without these unjustified presuppositions. But I've given justifications for the positions, therefore it's not a presupposition because a presupposition is lacking, not justifying your position and moving forward with the position as is.
Could you motivate to me why God's nature would be a specific way and not
Why
any other
God's
way?
nature? Well, I've already done that.
Okay, so God's nature has to be this way. Okay, so the way you evidenced it was
This is
right.
going to be the
Was the
least
most likely.
arbitrary, most explanatory model of theism.
Right, and you would take the most explanatory worldview to be true.
Yes. To be most likely to be true. Yeah. Most
But you'd
probable.
have to presuppose the one that's the most true.
No.
Okay, well, again, I just think, and I said this at the beginning, and I guess it
Mhm.
didn't really stick, but I think it's just, it's presuppositional to say we know where the universe comes from at all, because we don't have evidence. There's no evidential point to that end.
I've just given an argument, which is evidence.
An argument
You can
has to like
reject the
refer
argument,
to.
but
I would reject the nature of God. So
okay, you can reject the nature of God, but I haven't been given a reason to reject the nature of God other than you saying you're presupposing it.
I don't observe God's nature, so I wouldn't see why it has to be any one way over the other.
The last part of your sentence, I couldn't hear it. You said, I don't observe God's nature.
Therefore, I don't see why it would be any one way over any other way if it cannot be observed, tested, and measured.
Okay, so it has to be empirically observed.
Not just empirically, that's evidential. There has to be something testable, evidential.
Sure. Yeah, we can use
Some way
abduction,
to.
inference to the best explanation.
Well, you're kind of right. This is bleeding into my empiricism, but
So
I would
empiricism,
affirm
I would.
empiricism to be the most explanatory model by a long shot.
Can you empirically verify empiricism?
Yes, it is actually self-referential in some contexts. Like you could say that empirical proof yields results that do demonstrate things to be true to a much higher degree.
So,
Therefore, it is the most productive.
so you know that's circular, right?
Not viciously circular, so I'm okay with it.
It is viciously circular. How
It would
can
have
you
to be
use the
entirely
method
self-referential.
of empirical verification on empirical verification? That's using the method that you're testing.
Right, and I mean,
That's viciously circular.
that's not viciously circular because it's not entirely self-referential. You do reference things outside of empiricism,
This,
such as
this,
ontological things that exist,
this
such
is
as the
this
self,
is the
such as
same
the
thing
mind.
as like, can you scientifically verify the scientific method? Like, no, you can't do
Yes, you
that.
could. This has actually been done, and it's kind of funny. So, like the scientific method, it starts with a hypothesis. The scientific method is true. Then you would test the scientific method, and then you would evidence it. Then you'd form a hypothesis. Then you do a conclusion.
You're using the scientific method to prove the scientific method is
You
valid.
asked me, can the scientific method prove itself? And the answer is yes.
No, what I said specifically was, can you use the scientific method to verify the scientific method?
Yes.
You're using the method to verify the method that you're trying to use to verify. Like, that's a vicious circularity.
Yeah. Well, you asked if it could be done, and it can.
You can do so, but it's going to be through vicious circularity.
It's not vicious because it's not entirely self-referential. You
It is
reference
entirely
qualia that
self-referential.
are outside.
What are you?
No, you reference
well,
qualia.
qualia
You
is not
don't just
relevant to science, though. The qualia is not in the scientific method.
objective reality is not part of science.
So the scientific method, where is the part in the scientific method where it says use qualia to do use your qualia for many different things?
Your senses, everywhere.
Yes. Yes, that's not
You
relevant
have
to
to use your
science.
senses. Yeah,
That's not relevant to science.
it's relevant to empiricism.
Because in order to you're trying to see if science is valid, right? If you're trying to see I can use science, can I use science? And then you're
Can you
using
use your
science.
okay? What would your definition of empiricism be? I'm curious.
Empirical verification, using your physical senses in order to determine if something is true.
So, is using your physical senses to confirm anything circular?
To anything,
Anything.
if you're trying to verify empiricism itself, yes.
Do you have any other way to verify things other than your senses? Like, let's say you don't have any senses. You're a brain in a jar. What can you verify?
I mean, you can have thoughts about things that are true. I'm a
You can't because you
metaphysical.
have no reference point. You wouldn't have seen anything. You wouldn't have
That
heard
doesn't
anything.
mean that those thoughts aren't true. I'm a
We've actually
metaphysical
done this.
realist.
We've
So,
actually done this. Like we put a brain in a jar, and eventually it just stops synapsing. It slows synapsing, even if you keep its electrical pulsation going, because it has nothing
well,
to
that's
reference. It
because
has no
you've
memories. It has
severed a
no other.
brain.
Yeah. Well, no. You have. If you were to raise a brain without that had no prior experiences, it wouldn't know what it's like to have an experience. It wouldn't have the ability to think.
So, if you sever a brain, yes, it's not going to have the ability to think. And I'm familiar with brain in the vat experiments you're talking about, but the problem is these are going to make metaphysical assumptions that I already disagree with. So, do you
You
think
can
that
disagree with
truth?
the outcome of the you can disagree with the outcome of the experiment. That's just going to not be convincing
No, I'm disagreeing with the
an evidentially.
presuppositions made into the conclusions of the experiment. For example, is truth independent of the mind?
No.
No. So truth is dependent of the mind.
Yes. In order to say the word, in order to speak the word, and in order to think the word, you have to have a mind.
Okay. So you're saying that, for example, if I have two rocks sitting in front of me, if I did not have a mind, it would not be true that there are two rocks in front of me.
Yeah, you wouldn't be there, so therefore it wouldn't be true. No.
Okay.
Your brain is you, man.
So what I'm basically saying is that statement that you just said, is that 100, is that objectively true?
Thank God I have a mind to say yes.
So you couldn't say that because it's dependent on the mind, and objective means independent of
It's
the mind.
dependent on my mind in this case, and I have a mind. So
Okay, so you're telling me that if I'm sitting in front of two rocks, right, and my brain disappears, right, or I disappear as a whole, all human beings disappear except for these two rocks on Earth, right? These two golden rocks, because Earth is a rock, right? So would it be true that there are two golden rocks on Earth?
there would be no Earth. There'd be no one to observe or call it Earth. Anything that is not observed effectively doesn't have conceptual existence. It has
Okay.
real existence, but conceptual existence is necessary in order to be descriptive of anything. So if you can't describe
Okay.
things, there can't be things because things are descriptive of an object. It's
But can
transcendental.
those objects exist independent of a mind?
The objects exist. You just can't call them anything or reference them because in
Well, you
this.
can. You just wouldn't be a nominalist. You would
Oh,
be a
well, if you
realist.
do, then you'd be using a mind. You'd be using your mind to reference them. If we're
So
saying there's no minds, then
to
yeah,
reference them, yes, but essentially, what you're espousing is a view called nominalism, which means
yes.
that everything that we see is a mental fiction that our brains come up with.
No.
That's what
It
nominalism is.
exists, and we describe it using descriptive properties and
Okay, so then there
conceptual
is objective
properties.
truth then.
No, truth is a descriptive thing. It's not something that exists as like an ontological thing.
Is that so? True, there like true propositions, things like that, don't exist independent of the mind.
No, because in order to exist independent of mind, you would have to describe something. And last I checked, in order to describe something or make a descriptive claim, you have to have a mind.
If you don't make a descriptive claim, does that mean that something can't be true? Like this goes back to the gold rocks example. Can those gold rocks exist independent of the mind?
If you're calling them gold rocks, then they exist in your mind. They're your concept.
So
Let's just say, does stuff exist outside of what we can observe in the universe? As far as we know, no.
it
So
doesn't exist.
things outside of the observable universe, we have no reason to believe anything exists outside of the observable universe.
Okay. Are you
Because
familiar
we
with the
observe
black
it.
swan fallacy?
I'm familiar. I don't know how that would be.
Well, that's what you're doing. I don't see it, therefore it's not true. It's the same old. There are no such thing as black
No, I
swans. There
see
are
it.
only white
It's that
swans
no
because we haven't
mind
seen
sees it.
them.
It's that no mind sees it, which is consistent with my claim of these things don't exist
But
without mind.
the mind, truth is not dependent of the mind. Reality is not dependent on the mind. It's
You're
independent
right
of the
on the
mind.
second one. You're wrong on the first one.
Well, truth is that which coincides with facts and reality.
It's descriptive of reality. Correct.
So this is just unnecessary semantics, man. When I say truth, I'm defining it as that which coincides with facts and reality.
Truth is descriptive. In order to describe something, you have to think about it with a mind.
Truth, no. Truth, you could say that in some instances truth is descriptive, but if you look up the definition of truth, it's not going to say descriptive. It's going to say truth is that which coincides with facts and reality.
I have this lovely computer. I'm going to look up if truth is descriptive of reality, and it's going to say yes. Do you want me to do that, or can you just?
Well, that comes under the definition. But what I'm saying is things that are true facts, for example, are facts independent of the mind. Or is reality independent of the mind?
They're independent of the mind. They're not independent of all minds.
Reality is not independent of all minds?
Reality is not truth.
Okay, so would the proposition there are these two gold rocks in front of me be true if there were no minds to observe it?
If there were two things that we have never observed or never seen, then we have no reason to have any arbitrary idea of what these things are.
Would
You
they?
kind of get what I'm saying?
Well, no. See, we're speaking different languages, man. This is a
Here,
metaphysical
let me just
question.
say something. Yeah, if you're making a metaphysical question, you're presenting a hypothetical.
Yes.
So hypothetically, they exist in your mind because you're the one making the hypothetical where they exist within.
So what I'm saying is,
If you want to make something that's truly analogous to what I mean by they don't exist without minds, talk about something that you don't know exists. Talk about something that has never been observed ever, like a white
that has
hole.
never been observed ever.
Something that has never been observed. A rock has been observed before.
We've never
color green has been
observed the
observed
initial
before.
event of a supernova.
Oh, we have modernly.
We've seen the after effects of it, but it's impossible for us to observe the initial event because we can't see that far. The light doesn't
have
get to
occurred
us
in
right
our
away.
galaxy cluster. They occur pretty commonly.
So I'm saying like the light has to get to us, right?
Right, and it gets to us a lot because of how many there are.
But
We've observed
the initial
over
event
100.
we have not observed.
Yeah, that could be true.
But that doesn't mean it's not true. I just gave you an example of what you asked for.
Right, and like let's say there's something that we've never directly observed. Is it something that has been conceptualized?
Say that last part again.
Is it something that has been conceptualized?
Something that's
Like
been
the-
conceptualized?
The golden rocks you just
probably.
said. Right, so it exists in the mind of the conceiver.
But that supernova happened independent of the mind.
And we're assuming the exact qualia of the event that caused the supernova based on the after effects. We do this for a lot of things. And the reason it exists is because we can observe something and infer something else. So, like, what if you were to think about something that we have that's in a place we've never observed, that we don't have any residuals from, that we don't have any frame of reference? Well, you couldn't.
So I could, but I could
Okay,
it would be based
well,
off
what
of
would
no
be?
empirical data. And so I would probably be wrong. Or if I did guess correctly, it would be luck more than likely.
Right. So if you'd probably be wrong because you're taking a guess at something that we don't even know exists and something that you don't even know what it is. And this would be the same for me. If we're just taking like a random guess at something that exists outside of the observable universe, guess what? It's not going to be true because truth doesn't exist out there.
I would, like I said, if truth corresponds to facts and reality, truth does exist independent of the mind. That's just a metaphysical
If it exists
realist
independent
position.
of the mind, then something is able to describe something. Something is describing reality, but
No.
it doesn't have a mind.
No. Truth is not defined as describing that which corresponds to facts and reality. It's just that which corresponds with facts and reality.
I'm reading Deathless Light. I might look that up because that seems interesting. No evidence of the mind because the Kantinian phenomenal problem.
The Kantian phenomenon problem.
If you don't mind.
You want me? You said you want me to bring him up?
No, I'm going to look it up. I mean, you could bring him up.
He has been waiting for a minute. Here, I'll bring him up.
Oh, thank God! Hearing him trip over like freshman philosophy was. I was having a panic attack just hearing how bad it was.
Well, let's be nice.
Well, I'm not a philosopher.
Let's see what your view is. I'm trying to be as layman as possible in explaining
and I'll
metaphysical
keep it
realism.
layman. Pokey, do you have a concept of reality?
I do. It's within my mind.
Is your concept outside of your mind?
I just answered that.
Okay, so your concept of reality is contained inside of your mind.
My concept. That's a
Sure.
personal.
Now, is your perception inside of your consciousness, or is your perception outside of your consciousness?
Inside. The things I used to perceive are inside my consciousness.
Then everything that you describe as reality only maps onto perception, all of which is inside of your mind. You have no evidence of anything outside of a mind, and what could be asserted without evidence is dismissible without evidence. So we dismiss your mind-independent reality without evidence. Now, because we dismiss your
mind-independent reality.
Now, what's that?
I don't have a mind-independent reality.
Thank you. So now that we know that, so now that we falsified realism, we're on the Christian foundations of Platonism.
Well,
So
Platonism
now
is
that-
realism.
No, Platonism is real, but that's to be distinct from realism. I'm talking about this in a technical sense. I understand what you're saying, and I'm sympathetic.
Yeah.
But there needs to be.
I have a question for you. Is there something I could look up for the exact problem you gave in the comments? Because I looked up
It's
just
called the Gettier. It's called the Gettier problem of justified true belief. You can't. If there's a mind-independent reality, there's nothing you can know about it.
I would agree with that. That sounds good.
So if you agree with it, you can't even know whether it's there. And if it's indistinguishable from not being there, per Leibniz's identity of indiscernibles, it's not there.
Well, here's what
So-
I'll say. You said my mind, and I answered your question based on my mind. I do think there's other
right.
minds, though.
So you have no justification for that. It's not even possible.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. There's other minds other than me that can confirm.
How do you know that? What's the method? That you would need a method that would be mind independent of your own mind, but that would be circular reasoning.
It would be objective reality.
Objective reality is only reality which is describable through third-person language, not reality which is describable independent of the mind, because you would not be able to actually have the language leave your mind to make contact with the thing in itself, so that there was an actual way to ground your predicates in the noumena. That's just how that works.
So you're taking objective to be something that is mind independent.
Objective is only that which is describable in third-person language, and it can function.
Isn't language mind dependent?
No.
Language is not mind dependent.
Language is a system of communication that is instantiated by a systematic communicator. And a communicator is that which communicates intention and consciousness. So if there's a
That
mind
seems to be a
independent
mind.
what's that?
Consciousness. I would relate that to a mind.
No, consciousness is a substance. You could have mindless consciousness, such as Sazen or Satori in Buddhism.
Or physical.
I would not. I would not be a Buddhist.
Well, it doesn't matter if you're not a Buddhist. Some people are, and some people achieve the state of consciousness, and it's testable in labs. So, in this particular instance, what we're dealing with is that all of your skepticism is only feasible on a infeasible metaphysical foundation of realism.
My skepticism is only possible in my mind because it's mine.
So, if your skepticism is only possible in your mind, it's false the moment it goes outside of your mind, and you lost the argument.
I don't think it would be false outside of my mind.
That's a contradiction. That's a contradiction. If your skepticism is only possible inside of your mind, beyond your mind, it would be impossible, and you lose the argument.
No, it's not only.
That's
like,
no,
it
no.
isn't possible.
Possible.
It's only possible in virtue of my mind.
Hold on,
That
no,
doesn't mean it only exists
That's,
within
that's
my
just positing a distinction without a difference. You're just rephrasing the same contradiction, thinking I'm not going to catch you twice in it. I already got you. So here's what it is. If skepticism is only possible in your mind, the moment we get outside of your mind, what is impossible P becomes not P outside of your mind. So you're contradicting yourself. We falsified it.
I don't see why it becomes not P. Can you motivate that?
The mere fact it's invisible to you
'Cause it's
doesn't mean
only
it's not there. The
possible in
infrared
your
spectrum
mind.
is invisible.
So
The
if
infrared
it's,
spectrum is invisible.
No, it's not only possible in my mind. And what I conceded to, again, was that consciousness is only possible because of my mind. That's not that
Okay,
it's only possible.
so now that we have this, that you admit that consciousness is only possible because of your mind. You admit that possibility is grounded minimally on your consciousness. But if possibility is grounded minimally on your consciousness, and possibility includes the possibility of all conceivable actualities, then what that
I
means
stipulated my consciousness. My consciousness
okay,
depended on my mind.
it doesn't matter. The principle still follows universally from universal quantification. It's a principle of reasoning. So if possibility is only possible on the basis of the fact that you're able to predicate them on your mind, that would mean you'd have to grant that your mind is universal. But if your mind is universal, your mind is omnipresent, that would make you identical to God. So in order to disbelieve in God, you would actually have to be God yourself, and you would lose the argument.
Okay, don't get me wrong. I really like the sound of that. I really like the sound of being God, but I would not say my mind is universal.
Well,
Because
then,
I would
if
affirm
your
that my mind
if
is
your
my
is- so
consciousness
we
is
have-
emergent from my mind.
So we have you in a
and
destructive.
everyone else's consciousness is
We
emergent
have you
from
in a
everyone
destructive
else's
dilemma.
mind.
I now have you in a destructive dilemma to which either way you move, I'm going to get you. If your mind is not universal, then you cannot know universal truths because your mind would actually have to be universally omnipresent in order to instantiate the existence of anything else, which is mind independent
How
or
are you
mind
defining
contingent.
universal?
Universal is that which exists everywhere. True.
I would not define it that way. I would define universal
No.
as
That's the definition of it. It's a normative definition. You don't get to redefine normative definitions. That would be an accidental definition. Doesn't work
right.
that way.
Well, I didn't
It-
make the
that-
claim of
yeah, that
universal,
would
so
be-
I'm just referring to equality.
Okay, so now watch
hold on
this.
here.
If
Hold
you're-
on here,
now,
guys.
now,
Hold
now
up.
here's what,
Hold
now
up.
here's what
Hold
we
up.
have. If-
Hold up, man.
Hold on.
So-
Hold on.
Hold on a second. Hold on a
Let me
second.
finish
I see what you're
Dude,
saying,
you can't
but
save
just
his life just when I'm getting ready to take the coup de grace and take his head off.
just give me a second, man. Just give me a second, all right? Jill. So I get where you're going. Just to be, a little more gracious here, only
Why?
because Pokey is clearly not a philosophy. Like
Who cares?
there's. Well, the point is, if we want Pokey to learn,
No, hold on. No, hey, Truth, I like you.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone wants to step up and debate with the big boys, you punch him as hard as the big boys hit. Okay, that's
man.
he's not going to learn unless.
Being
What,
rhetorically
that's a
punched
very
being framed
Andrew
as a good
Wilson
thing is
approach
kinda
of you.
funny.
okay, so he's
go
going to
ahead
learn the hard way.
Go ahead and
Okay.
present the dilemma. Go ahead.
So if your mind is by definition particular, that means all the truths that you have are particular truths that have no extensivity in any universal sense, because all the universals would be grounding on a particular, and causes aren't sufficient to their effects. But if you can't ground your universal truths, it's only because causes are sufficient to their effects, and your universal truths have a universal grounding in a universal mind, which includes yours.
If you're
Either
going to
way-
give like universal truths my personal pronoun and proclaim them mine, I'm going to disagree with that because I don't think
That's not what's being said at all.
You said my universal truth.
Excuse me. Let me make this perfectly clear. Are you a particular or are you a universal?
I'm a particular.
That means if you're a particular and you have no universal element, you don't even participate in the universal category of being a human, and you falsify your own human existence. And that means you falsified every single concept in your own mind.
I would take universal to be everything that is observed.
If you take a universal to be everything that is observed, and your observation is particular, but everything that is observed is actually a universal, as you said, you could only ground that statement on a universal consciousness. Which still
Everything
falls.
that is observed would just be relevant to every observer. So I would affirm every observer.
Yeah, but that's a total non sequitur. It has nothing to do with what we're talking
Well,
about.
I can continue with my universals because I don't agree with that.
So here's what it is. The non-existence of God doesn't exist.
I don't think so.
Well, the burden of proof is on you now to prove to me that non-existence exists.
I don't think
You just
that
made the
either.
positive. No, actually, you're the one who made the positive claim. Does non-existence not exist?
I think when someone says no, I don't think
Stay
so.
on topic.
that's not
Does
a
non-existence
positive
not
claim.
exist?
Is I don't think so a positive claim?
No. Does non-existence not exist?
Does non-existence not exist? I feel like by definition that would be true.
Okay, so that means God's non-existence is not possible, and you lost the argument.
No, I would say that God's existence is just as impossible.
So no, by saying it's just as impossible as non-existence, but non-existence doesn't exist as it exists in order to even be impossible, then that would be a reductio ad absurdum, which guarantees its existence. So now God, you just said that existence and non-existence are identical, and you made God exist. You lost. How's it feel to
Then
lose?
you define non-existence
How's it
as
feel to
something that
lose?
does
How's
not
it feel to
exist.
hey, how's it feel to lose? How's it feel
So
to
if
lose?
non-existence is
How's
something
it
that
feel to
doesn't
hey, how's it
exist,
feel to
and I say
lose?
that God is
How's it feel to
non-existent,
lose?
and God
Okay,
is
How's it feel to
okay,
lose?
okay.
How's it feel?
Deathless light.
Gotcha. Hey,
Chill,
that's
man.
how you take it. Take care. Bye.
All right, man. Well, I guess.
Well, here, let me just follow up on that in like a very cordial manner. He like so define. I'm going to look into what he said because I think he might have actually like rhetoric aside, he might have had a point. I'm going to go figure it out. But again, I think that not something that is non-existence, does that thing not exist? He said definitionally. So what I take the definition of non-existence to be is something that does not exist, right? So if I were to say that God is non-existent, I would be saying that God does not exist. I don't see a definitional contradiction there. Could you help me?
Well, truthfully, before getting it, because where this is going is we were trying to define like metaphysical positions. He actually doesn't agree with me. He doesn't agree with metaphysical realism. He agrees. It sounds like he's a Platonist. But it's not, he said, does non-existence not exist? Right? It's kind of like a rhetorical strategy. So,
Ooh, I probably shouldn't have said yes to that.
what I would have said is, what does that mean? But I didn't get to ask him that. I wasn't sure where he was going. I wasn't sure if he was a troll or not to begin with. But he had been waiting for like an hour to join the live, and he's been dying to talk to you. So
It
either
looks
way,
like question mark KG wants to come up too for the
yeah,
same
I
reason.
actually
I mean,
wanted
if you
to
want
talk to him before I get off here because he brought up an argument yesterday that I'd never heard before that I actually did some research in, so I wanted to talk to him about that. But listen, Pokey Bear, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you coming up with me and sparring. It was a lot of fun. We may disagree, but I would encourage you to look up like Bayesian arguments for God's existence. And I'll assure you, you'll find that the philosophers who are responsible for these, that have come up with them in more the analytic philosophy area, they're not presup apologists, which I
okay.
have
I just
somewhat
got
of a
one
fear
like
previous guy
leading
did.
question so that I can do maybe a little more homework.
Sure.
So the all possible worlds modality. The first time I heard of it, it was from an atheist, and you might know him,
Graham Oppie.
Ian. Do you know Ian?
Ian? Yeah. I've debated
Yeah,
him several times.
yeah, and I mean, I think he's like obviously way smarter than me, but I just don't find that intuitive at all. I don't think that like you should affirm the possibility of things having ontology. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I
Well,
think
you
that's
think
what's happening.
things have ontology, don't you? At least some things?
Yeah, I think real things, but I'd make a distinction between real things and possible and logically possible things, because I think like
Well,
again,
so does
maybe if I'm wrong.
possible world semantics.
Yeah,
The
so
only
again,
difference is the purpose of the brain exercise. It's literally all it is trying to exercise, do these hypotheticals fit whatever? Whatever you're
right.
talking about. So they have utility for sure.
Oh, hypotheticals have a huge utility. The utility of hypotheticals is not to posit that the things in these hypotheticals are real. It's to posit that the things in the hypotheticals could be the case. Right? And
Yes.
what does all possible worlds mean? I'm pretty sure that is affirming all possibilities are real.
No,
I think that would like
what it's saying. The purpose of using possible world or modality speech or modality in philosophy is to basically examine. And don't worry, question. I'm bringing you up here soon. Don't you get out of that guest box. The purpose of that is in order to kind of look and see like if something exists necessarily. So like if God exists necessarily, that would mean exist in all possible worlds, right? And so like the ontological argument would defend that God has the predicate of existence, which many people disagree with, but that's not the point here. Whereas
what if I disagree with necessary things existing? Because I kind of do.
you could, that's fine. You can definitely do that. There are people that do that, and they think that everything will lead back to a brute fact. That's fine.
Brute factism is, in my opinion, incoherent.
Well,
what I would say is
brute
that
fact
some things
would just
lack an
be-
explanation. Some things lack an explanation. Don't lack an explanation.
yeah.
Because that's what a brute fact is. They simply don't. The explanation isn't understood. Which isn't to say that it doesn't happen, right?
Okay, so you would say there are no brute facts, and there's nothing that exists necessarily then.
Yeah, I would say, and
Okay.
where I'm
And you
getting
think the
nothing exists
universe is
necessarily.
infinite, so that's fine.
Yeah, and where I'm getting it from, like nothing exists necessarily, is that there is nothing that you can point to that exists that is necessary because
Yeah,
there's no way to
and
instantiate it in
that's a
all
position
world.
you can take. That's fine. What I'm saying is that just means you are left with an infinite regress.
Naturally,
Yeah.
it's
Which
ironic.
next time you come back, we'll talk about that because I got a whole lot of work I've done on that. I've actually started to write a paper on that. I need to finish.
Do you have resources I have access to? If you're published,
No, I'm not published. I wish. Well, that's the paper I was starting to work on because I wanted to go to be published. I did some research into what it takes to publish a paper. I was really inspired by Joe Schmid. That dude publishes a paper like once a week. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a brilliant philosophy kid and agnostic guy on YouTube. But anyways, come back, man. We'll talk about that, and maybe we'll see what you think. I've done more work in that space, so I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are.
my
All right.
profile picture of Hexus. That's how you remember me.
It's what?
Hexus.
Hexus? What is
You ever watched
Hexus?
the movie Fern Gully?
What is it called?
Fern Gully. It's like the fairy bullshit kids movie. Really old. Disney
No,
movie.
I don't
He's
think
the
so.
villain. Look him up. He's got a really good song.
Doesn't ring a bell, man. All I've been watching the last year or so, my wife and I just watch a lot of anime when our kids go to sleep.
Well, I haven't watched Fern Gully since I was 6.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's just the coolest. So look him up.
Okay, sounds good. All right, man. Well, thanks for the time, and I'll see you next time when you come up. All right.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. All righty.
Yo, what's up, man? Wait,
What's
before
up,
we
man?
move on with the conversation, there's like a really big thing you need to know about Deathless. I'm gonna say in TikTok friendly language to not like get you any strikes, but like
Okay, I
He's
lost my
repeated-
headphone thing, so I'm going to be looking for that, but I'll still be listening. So go ahead.
yeah. He's repeatedly threatened to unalive multiple people's families by saying he's going to run them over. I can send you the person specifically that has like a police report on him going on right now. There's a whole investigation into it. It's like really bad. Like he's an admitted schizophrenic. He's very unstable. Like I'm not trying to like diss him or anything. It's just that he's a little off his rocker. I guess that's the word. So in it, I'm not just like saying this to discredit him. I engage with his arguments a lot consistently. It's just that I wanted to let you know if you like have any objections against that type of stuff. But yeah, now we can talk about like the argument though from yesterday.
Okay. Yeah, I've never heard of that dude before until today. So hopefully I don't get myself in trouble here. Anyways, good to know. Where can I find that information?
Yeah, I'll send the guy.
Well, you got to actually
just,
do
like-
it because you didn't send me that argument yesterday.
I know. I
Terribly
tried
offended.
to DM you, but then it said my message limits were reached. So that just can. Do you know what I don't know what they are, to be honest. But on TikTok, it will be like
You can
your
message somebody who doesn't follow you 3 times.
Yeah, I know. You can message them one time, but sometimes
goodness.
randomly, like depending on the content of your messages, it just doesn't let you send it at all. That's what happened yesterday, and since I can only once send one message, it wouldn't let me after that.
All good. So I did look up the argument, and I didn't write down the argument, but if I remember it correctly, if God exists, then there are non-computing. Lay it out for me one more time. Make sure.
If God exists, if God exists, it implies non-computable functions are computable.
That's what it is.
God, if
Okay.
non-computable functions are not computable, therefore God does not exist. It
Right.
relates specifically to Turing machines and the halting problem.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so there are a couple of different responses. There's actually almost no work in the philosophy journals on this, so that's why
I did invent the argument myself. It's like I haven't seen this anywhere else.
Okay. Well, I guess that would make sense as to why I couldn't find any literature on this. So I just kind of did a little bit of research into what it is, and like basically, this guy Turing came up with that, like you had mentioned yesterday. He came up with this algorithm that basically shows with algorithmic knowledge, it's impossible to know all possible computable knowledge or computable whatever, right?
Yep.
Okay. You can't get, it's like impossible to do that. So there are a couple different responses to this that you could come up with. The first one, and I think is actually the most simple, would be that we could just say that with the traditional definition of omniscience, God knows all possible knowledge. So if this knowledge is truly impossible to know, it's outside of the scope of omniscience anyway. So it doesn't defeat the triomni God. The second response would be potentially that this such like we have a category error. So, for example, algorithmic knowledge does not equate to propositional knowledge, and omniscience is usually defined as knowing all true propositions. And so it's just the category is totally different. So it's decided, like algorithmic knowledge is decided by a procedure, and then propositional knowledge is decided or knowable by a mind. So they're just two different things here. So like humans can know truths that are, and minds can know truths that are non-algorithmic or non-algorithmically. That's a long word. So that this, it just shows that the second premise we can just, or that either the first, now I can't remember which aspect I'm attacking here. Basically, I'm just showing that it doesn't match that we've defeated omniscience. Have you heard any of these responses so far? Or no?
No, I've heard some of them. I can go through them one by one. So the first one is just you said it's not going to be traditional with like omniscience. So it just if it's impossible to access knowledge, then well, it's just impossible even for an omniscient being to know this. That's just going to be I understand the rejection, but the part of the issue is I don't know if you've done any research, which I'm assuming I'm not going to blame you obviously for not. You've had one day to learn about Turing machines, not even actually. But like Turing machines are extremely versatile to the point where with you can encode basically anything into it. So if we're going to be taking it to be the case that that we're just not going to have epistemic access to all outcomes of the Turing machine, God would become like severely limited to the point where like all he would have done is created said universe, right? And at that point, he literally is kind of just like watching things unfold because he won't actually know what's happening. So like basically, I actually think that that's an interesting idea. I'm not sure how limited his omniscience would be. I haven't like done any work into how many propositions it would encode, but it would basically mean he would have the most basic like you know how a lot of people think that laws of physics are objective. The extent of his knowledge would basically be just his perfect implementation of these set objective laws, and then knowing the outcomes of some finite amount into the future. Roughly, I'd say, let's just call it a billion years at best. I feel like even then that's going to be pushing it a lot, but it would severely limit knowledge. So I mean, that one I'll look into is the first response, whether or not it aligns with just like impossible knowledge for an omniscient entity to access. Well, the second one you said was it's going to be a category error. That again is just that the response is that you can encode most propositions that have truth values into Turing machine, and it's like this is going to halt if and only if the statement is false, and then if it runs forever, it's going to be true, or vice versa. You can also encode that. That's like actually a really big deal in mathematics. It like demonstrates Turing machines are going to be independent of Zermelo-Franco's set theorem with axiom of choice. So we have to use stronger axioms to prove whether or not these things halt.
Okay.
And what was the third objection? I forgot what it was.
That you could know truths non-algorithmically.
Yeah, that once again, it's just going to be I actually can agree to that fully. It's just the issue is that omniscience generally it's agreed upon. He's going to have perfect foreknowledge of what happens in the universe, and I know your objection to that as well. Once a being comes into existence, but if not, then it's not going to affect that. And I agree. I can just accept this, but like I already said, due to there being sectors of the universe that are going to have no beings, then it's going to be the case. He's not going to have this perfect knowledge of the future, which is going to be a real issue for theism, I suppose. Like it just seems to limit his power. And also, once again, the fact you can.
Well, let me ask a question on that, and also a fourth solution would be open theism, which I'm not an open theist, but that is a solution.
I'm gonna be real. I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's just where it's not possible for God to have knowledge, like the way it's called dynamic omniscience. So essentially, like the common view of foreknowledge is wrong in that all future propositions God doesn't necessarily know because he can't know. It's impossible to know because they're done by these free creatures. And God, the capability, like basically, we just have a misunderstanding of what true omniscience is. So that's why they came up with dynamic omniscience. These process philosophers and open theists came up with this in like maybe the 50s or something like that. And you have a lot of Christians who actually run this position, Christian philosophers and theologians. So it's essentially that the future is open, and that's why we call it open theism.
Okay, that's understandable. That's understandable. I can't really make a response to that right now. I mean, that is just gonna say, well, yeah, it is impossible in that sense. Like, well, that's fair enough. And I will admit also, I want to clarify this argument. It actually doesn't like disprove every notion of God, especially like differently defined omniscient God. Is just gonna like, I think it mainly tries to attack classic omniscience of knowing all true propositions and demonstrating the impossibility of that, and then applying it to the universe for the past,
Well,
present,
so
and future.
let me ask about that then. That's what I wanted to ask before I brought up open theism. Why is it that you can't, like, if God just comes to the knowledge in a different way, like instead of coming to the same knowledge algorithmically, he comes to it in a different manner? Like, if he just doesn't come through it algorithmically, but comes to the same knowledge, where's the problem?
Oh yeah, I understand that. It just seems I don't really. It's like basically there's no mechanistic explanation. It's basically just saying he just knows, and that's the extent of it. It's basically saying he just is able to do it. That's it. We can't explain it. We don't know why. There's no like epistemic access we have to this information game. We don't even know what it would entail. We just know that he knows all true propositions. That's it. Because since like any other way of coming to epistemic access can be encoded into a Turing machine, it would have to be some like really robust, non-conventional way of having some like knowledge on propositions to the extent of he's effectively equivalent to mathematical systems himself, because mathematical systems obviously have the truth value of the Turing machines halting or not, and it would be like saying he is equivalent to these systems and they're like actually part of his divine parts. I feel like that's the closest we could get to that.
Okay, well, saying divine parts, you'd be triggering those divine simplicity folks.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. Like that, I don't
Yeah,
know if you're.
I don't no, I don't support divine, at least not in the sense, the like Thomistic sense. That just I can't get over modal collapse, and that's just weird to me. It's not. It
Oh,
doesn't seem.
I don't know if you're a Thomist in any sense, but like I
No.
actually with Thomist, like I actually have like a personal grudge against argument from motion because it embarrassed me like roughly 2 months ago, and then I like really researched into it. So now like anyone that
It
runs
was only
motion,
2 months ago you heard the argument from motion.
no. I've known it for a while, but it's just I was in a debate and someone ran like a different version of it. And I actually got like slapped around by it. It was bad. So like I actually went into like a week long dive of finding every version of motion just so I can beat anyone that runs that. I actually hate the argument so much. Act potency distinction is gibberish if you really break it down.
It just
Like,
depends on your metaphysics. That's what it'll boil
yeah,
down to.
I don't like it. I have like an entire like probably 10 pages of notes dedicated to act potency distinction and just like rebuttals to variations of it.
Okay. Well, I don't run that argument, so you won't have to worry about that here. I am not a Thomist. I love Thomas Aquinas. I got his Summa over here, but I think I like Aristotelian metaphysics before him.
I mean,
I
fair enough.
think he does some things that are a little bit off. But anyway, especially with divine simplicity. But anyways, I'm still seeing, like, it seems to me the statement, I am conscious, that proposition, we don't have to algorithmically come to that conclusion. I don't think you can algorithmically come to that conclusion.
I
Can you?
mean, I'm not sure. It really actually depends on how we define consciousness, and also whether or not you're a physicalist. Like,
No, I'm
let's
not
just
a
take it.
physicalist.
I know, but let me just like run it. For example, in a physicalist worldview, at least temporarily, even though you're not one,
Mm-hmm.
it would be like if the mind is completely physical and it follows under the nomological laws of the universe, then we're going to be able to algorithmically predict, or not. We will be able to, but there is going to be an algorithm because the universe is Turing complete. It's going to basically we can run this. We'll know when something is going to be conscious and not,
I
and
see.
that's how we're going to get over that. But since you're
I
not a
see.
physicist, I'm assuming you're a substance dualist
I
or
am.
something else.
Hmm.
Since you're a substance dualist, I'm not sure. I need to research more into that, especially like when it comes to souls and shit. I also got spanked on that recently, and I have not yet come to a rebuttal for
Philosophy
that,
of
so I'm
mind
still
is kind of
researching
a
it.
vague field, though. There's a lot of like, I would willingly switch to property dualism if given good reason to reject substance dualism. I usually just hear people say, "But the connection problem." I'm like, that's not really that big of a problem to me. But I think actually one of the bigger positions that you have to take in order for this argument you're running to work is actually determinism. So I think freedom of the will is actually going to throw that off, because if freedom of the will is like, if libertarian free will in particular is true, then we can't algorithmically predict all things, because algorithms are basically going to come into predictions. If said algorithm is met, said action is going to take place, right? Or said thing is going to be true, right?
Yeah, it can perfectly predict.
Right. Whereas with libertarian free will, that's not the case. That couldn't be the case, because there's always the principle of alternative possibility. PAP.
Yep,
That's what they call it.
I do understand that. I mean, one response I can think of that obviously it's not. Besides like just arguments against libertarian free will, let's just take that to be the case temporarily, and I accept this. Since I'd say probably my best rebuttal to that is just going to be the case. We can have some like algorithm such that if input X is met, then we're going to go to this part of the or this new Turing machine, and if Y is met, like the counterfactual to what happened, so like this other possibility, we would just move on to the other Turing machine. So accounting for libertarian free will while being deterministic basically about everything else, and that's also still going to require some epistemic access to the Turing machines, talking about the deterministic parts of the universe. And also this is like the thing I always go back to, the main thing. If we just like section off universes or the parts of the universe with no conscious beings that would even have libertarian free will, we can still apply the determinism problem there. And then epistemic access to the haltingness of these other Turing machines. That's about it, basically. But yeah, I do agree free will is going to be relatively decent rebuttal to it, at least temporarily, due to like algorithmic randomness.
Okay. So did I give you anything new to think about, or
Yeah,
all these
yeah,
things?
you did
Okay.
give me something new to think
Okay.
about. I mean, I'm really just gonna dive into the different types of omniscience and like how they're gonna interact with the argument. But other than that, I actually do got Calc 2 homework to do for university, so I am gonna have to hop off now.
Okay.
Hope you have a
All
great
good.
day, man.
Well, I appreciate you coming up. Feel free to send me any literature you find. And then
Hold up. Let me before I forget, if I
Yeah.
like, I don't want to like have it. Let me just send.
send me that stuff.
Yeah, hold on. Let me go pull up his username really quick. Let me go into my following so I can just pull up a chat message. Click.
You know, it's funny, that guy reminded me of Darth Dawkins, who was in here for a minute. I saw him in here, but I don't think he's here anymore.
Oh, I actually, I don't know if you know who Darth, like, I don't know how much you know Darth Dawkins, but like,
Very
no one
little.
takes him seriously.
I
Everyone,
know
like, in
that,
this,
but
everyone in the
very
community
little.
despises him.
Okay, I saw him debate Alex Malpass, and that was rough.
Wait, was he also running his normal he was running tag, and
Tag,
and
yeah.
his ability to the contrary. Yeah, the rebuttal to that, I just want to say it in case like this gets clipped or anything, is I want him to see it because he actually just blocks me on every account he has mod on, because he also demands mod from any person he goes on panel that's like in agreement with his worldview. The rebuttal to the argument is just that nothing in the universe is going to align with what we see in designed objects of humans, because things we see in human made objects are efficiency, non-complexity, and cost-effective. And the universe is not that. Stars are super cost-ineffective. They're very inefficient, and they're overly complex. You see this like basically ever in the universe. Life is too, so on and so forth. And I don't think he understands that complexity is actually bad for a design argument. Like I said, humans, while the things we make are complex, we try and make it as non-complex as possible. Like your phone is optimized as much as possible, even though it is extremely complex in its inner workings.
I thought
It
he
doesn't just have
runs
random
tag,
parts.
not like
Yeah.
a intelligent design art. Because
Oh, he runs that too. I think he like tries to mash them
Okay.
together.
because the best or most coherent proponent of tag, I think, is maybe Jay Dyer. And I still don't agree with tag, because I think there's actually a philosopher on this app. His name is Mr. Flensington or something like that. Flensington. I can't remember his name is long. Flensington, something of this sort. He actually wrote a paper on this called the OAT, Ontological Admissibility Theory, which I still haven't finished. So if you're watching Flents, sorry, I'm going to finish that. It's a full published paper. Flentzer McFlensington. Thank you. Don't Google it. Who I still can't figure out how to make a mod. But anyways, he wrote a paper on, and it just boils down to, I don't see a reason to, like, where we get God is necessary for logic. I don't see a contradiction between the existence of realism in general, like any sort of realistic metaphysic, and atheism. Although I reject atheism, I don't see a logical contradiction there. So it seems like a crazy hill to climb that's not even necessary. But anyways.
All right, man. Have a great day, though.
Hey, you do
You
the
got to
same,
get
man.
to that homework. I said it in your DMs, by the way.
Sounds good, man. Appreciate it. Alrighty, folks. All right, I'm going to take this last few seconds here. Don't Google it. You need to help me make you a mod. I need mods because I know as I get people like that other guy that came up, I got to be careful. I don't want to get in trouble, especially when they're doing wild things like that. Let's see if I can figure that out. Here, don't Google it. Come up real quick so you can walk me through this. You better know how to do this. You're like everyone's mod, so you need to know how to do this. Or Christ follower Renee, if you know how to do that, that's helpful too. Oh, here we go. Yo, what up, man?
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
All right, what do I do? Help me out here.
I think you have to click on my profile, and then there's should be the 3 little dots. You have to click on that.
Wait a second. And remember, I'm on a computer. I am not.
Oh yeah, I actually don't know how to do it on my computer.
You phone people. That's all right.
Yeah.
Usually on my phone. Because going live on the computer is just way better. It's way, way better. All right. It says request
I haven't got mine.
management. Maybe that would be allow moderators to manage requests. Okay.
Yeah, I think those are options once you have somebody that's already a mod. Those are the type of things that they can do.
All right. I'm gonna chat.
You know what you
GPT
should do
this.
is that's a good idea.
That's what you're gonna say.
Yeah.
All right. Because I don't know. Do you know that guy that was on here before?
No, I just came back. I left for a little while.
No, the guy. I saw you laughing in the chat about the dude that was
Oh, the Pookie Bear
not
guy?
Pookie Bear. The other guy that sounded like a precept dude, but I don't know. Just dark, deathless light.
No, I didn't. I wasn't here for that.
All right.
Dark, deathless light. Interesting.
All right. So it says to, let's see, if I'm live streams, fastest way, go to live, go to viewer list. Okay, I'm in the viewer list. Why isn't it? Do I have to be live to do this, or can I do this after the fact?
I'm actually not sure if you have to be live or not. I think you should be able to adjust your moderator list outside of being live. You could probably do that.
Okay. Just you can get down, man. I just wanted to see if you knew how to do that. Just
Yeah, it's the PC thing. If it was on the phone, I know how to do it. Maybe just start a live with your phone.
okay. No, I'm not gonna do that. I'll figure it out.
That's what. Your Luke is your brother, right?
No. Why do people keep saying
that's
that?
not
He's not
true.
my brother. No.
I thought that was really the lore. I thought that was real.
No. He's just my
I
buddy.
fell for it. Oh, okay.
Yep. My brother is Brendan, who is Prince of Planter on here. He'll be doing lives with me eventually. He's just been busy. I've just finally stopped being lazy and have my setup here to do. I'm live on YouTube at the same time as well. So I've been wanting to do that for a long time.
You should.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
you should promote your YouTube. I haven't heard you say that at all this whole time. You should promote that. Maybe more people would join.
Okay. Well, hey guys, I'm on YouTube.
Yeah, join my YouTube. Yeah,
Join my YouTube. TikTok, don't get mad at me for saying that. Let's see here, but yeah, that's because I want to start. I got to get back into the swing of things, doing debates and whatnot, and making videos like I used to. Oh, I can't directly do this inside of Live Studio. I have to do it on my phone. Okay.
Oh, that makes sense.
There we go. Okay. Well, there's the answer. Well, I will do that on my phone.
All right, man.
All right, man. I appreciate
Have a
that.
good night. I'll talk to you soon. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, buddy.
Take it easy.
See ya. All right, folks. I'm going to hop off. It is getting late here, and yet I have work tomorrow, but I appreciate the help for those who just helped me through that little debacle. But otherwise, thank you for the wonderful conversations. Appreciate the love, the hate, the skeptics, and, of course, the fellow followers of Christ. Again, the goal of this channel is to have rigorous conversations about truth and to hopefully bring people to Christ. As a Christian, that is my goal. But I appreciate all the support, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.